The Earl of Rostrey's estate. A funeral was taking place there, and many were discussing the event. Now the only representative of the Rostrey family is their sick daughter. After this, Lissa began to cough, and with each attack blood appeared. She cried, experiencing unbearable pain due to the death of her loved ones, and realized that this was the end. Lissa understood that she was doomed to death. With so many other characters, she couldn't understand why she was reborn in this particular body. She was reborn as Lissa Rose Rostrey, a character from the novel The Empire's Greatest Bargain. She liked that cute little face. But that's where the positives ended. She was destined to die at 21. Moreover, they all died without repaying their long-standing debts. During the funeral, people burst into the house and declared that there must be something valuable left there, and began searching the estate. They begged, asking where all the adults had gone. Lissa had absolutely no idea what money was being discussed. She wanted with all her might for this stranger in the crowd to move away from her. Now a person was supposed to appear who would take her away from here. Lissa had no idea that her days were numbered. In fact, only 2 people in the world knew about it. One of them was her mother, the Countess, and the other was the man who was about to appear. It was Duke Caroudin Ivan Eckard. No one could understand what this Duke was doing here. His gait, his black cloak, he looked truly impressive. The Duke led a quiet, peaceful life, caring only about his own possessions, but when his wife died, he became like a power-hungry psychopath ready to do anything. In the original story, he played his own games behind the scenes to gain control over the imperial family. At first, he did not have much power. He intervened in politics too late, but after a few years, he became the head of the aristocracy. He even managed to marry his son off to the imperial princess. He was confident that he would achieve what he wanted, having secured the support, it seems, of the Socratic family and the imperial dynasty itself. But everything was destroyed by Princess Alani, the main character. Alani fell in love with the protagonist, not his son. He went too far and still failed to achieve his goal in the original story. The author wrote that the sequel would come out after the financial problems were resolved, but Lissa was reborn without ever having time to read it. He almost approached her. Everyone gasped when they saw him. He asked Lissa if she had a place where she could go. The girl replied that she had nothing and again pressed herself close like a swallow. Then he smiled and said he had a solution. He asked her if she wanted to become his son's wife. Finally, he said it. She had been waiting for this for a long time. Even though Lissa already knew what would happen, she was still worried. He said it so directly and sincerely, without conditions. Matilda was very close to Larissa's mother. Matilda is his wife, Duchess Eckard, who died giving birth to her son. If Matilda were alive, she would have definitely brought Lissa to them, which is why the Duke came for her himself. Lissa pretended to be surprised. In fact, she knew it was a lie and no one would believe it. She remembered the original plot and did not believe that a man who lived only for power took it for such a sentimental reason. The Duke said that if Lissa married his son, he would pay off all her parents' debts and provide her with a life of abundance. The girl was delighted and asked him to take care of her, calling him father. The Duke was surprised, and although Lissa knew about all his selfish plans, she had no other choice now. If she was going to die in this story anyway, then it would be better to retire in luxury as it was in the novel. He was shocked when she called him father. Then Lissa got scared. It was scary to stand in front of such a man, especially for such a minor character like her. He is the main character and also the villain. That's why she said she was asking for forgiveness. Lissa explained that she said this simply because they were now one family. After this, the Duke turned around and began to leave, and the girl did not understand why he did it so abruptly. He said everything was fine. Then he added that she could go with him, and then Lissa was happy. She decided to follow the Duke as was the original. On his way to the duchy, he stopped at the imperial palace and issued a marriage certificate. The rest of the way he sat in silence. And now Lissa has officially become Lissa Rose Eckard, although in reality all this officialdom was just a formality. With such a character, Lissa should have become a villain. She just can't believe that she has such a weak body, and that her life will be so hard. After that, they arrived and she was given private quarters. Her life will definitely get better. Difficult, but still better. The maid said that if she needed anything, she should let her know. The maid introduced herself as Lissa and was pleased to meet her new mistress. The girl replied that she shouldn't be addressed that way, she could just be called Larissa. Otherwise, she'll feel a little awkward. But Lissa smiled and said that she would call her whatever the lady wished. Then Larissa nodded, thanked her, and said that she could go and rest. Larissa said goodbye to her and sincerely thanked her for her care. Unfortunately, the disease, which was not hereditary, made the destruction of the originals the only correct solution. But in truth, Larissa knew that there was a cure for her illness. She just couldn't get it here. She had a brother named Fred, 5 years older than her, who was now studying abroad far to the east. For the past few years, the exchange of letters has been impossible due to the invasion of evil spirits. Fred returned home only after Larissa's death, and there was a moment in the novel when he cried in front of her grave, talking about the cure. If Larissa had eaten 10 berries of ocolade every day for 5 years, there would have been no trace of the disease. This meant that Larissa's illness was now incurable. However, despite having this information, it was of no particular use. The oclasia tree is extremely rare, and the berries are also very difficult to store, so they are difficult to find on the market. Larissa was very lucky if she managed to eat at least 1 or 2 berries a day, but she experienced a real shock when she suddenly saw those very same berries outside the window. She couldn't believe her eyes. There was an oclasia tree growing outside the window. Larissa did not understand at all how this could happen, and thought that perhaps it was just luck that befell the traveler. It could have been God's will for her to live her life, or the work of the devil who wanted to use her to radically change the outcome of the plot. Be it God or the devil, she was very grateful to him. She sincerely thanked him at least for this food. Evan finally decided to try to live longer than 21 years, and 3 months later the maids again noticed blood when Larissa coughed. They turned to the lady, but Larissa assured them that everything was fine and thanked them for their concern. Everything was already fine, so all they could do was hold on. She was already waiting for them. Today the Duke was supposed to bring home Evan, who had previously been kept at the academy. This was their first meeting with the Duke apart from the incident at the funeral. She didn't want to anger the Duke this time. Her husband was a year younger, a minor character of little importance. Evan had been sent to the academy as soon as he turned 6. The Duke was so indifferent even to his own son that it was creepy. It was even scary to imagine how wild and offensive it was for Evan. At 13 years old, he unexpectedly married a girl he saw for the first time in his life. Her marriage to Evan caused quite a stir in aristocratic circles. As the Duke's power began to grow rapidly, so did the number of eyes focused on him and his actions. The Duke tried to control the imperial family even through marriage alliances, and this had to be nipped in the bud. This was not the most favorable situation for the Duke, who had not managed to accumulate enough strength to be prepared for something like this. Therefore, until the Duke's son reaches the age suitable for marriage with the princess, the lady decided to use Larissa to avoid rumors and suspicions. The fact that Larissa's mother and the Duke's wife were close became only a convenient pretext for taking Larissa to the palace. The Duke was a man who treasured his late wife very much. It was rumored that this was exactly the kind of wedding the Duchess would have wanted in her lifetime, and the Duke was simply hiding his true intentions. And the Duke understood that Larissa had little time left, which meant that she would die when it was convenient for him. He accidentally overheard her mother's words when she came to his wife's grave. After Evan married Larissa, there was a bit of a stir, but the other nobles breathed a sigh of relief. Taking advantage of the weakened vigilance, the Duke significantly strengthened his position. In about 7 years, the Duke will gain enormous power and will want to keep the imperial family under control through the remarriage of his son Evan to the main character Alani, but the problem was that this time she wouldn't die. She became curious about what would happen if she did live to see her 21st birthday. According to the law, divorce is not available to her, so she will not even be able to end this marriage. If she does not die in time, perhaps the Duke himself will take her life. The maid did not understand what was happening and thought that the mistress simply was not going to leave the room. But Larissa decided that the main thing was not to give herself away while she was undergoing secret treatment for the disease. She apologized to the Duke for being late. The Duke replied that everything was fine, but looked coldly at Larissa. She became afraid. She needed to look as exhausted and sick as possible so that he would not have the slightest doubt about her imminent death. The Duke noticed that Larissa looked better than the last time he saw her. He even got the impression that she had put on a little weight. She got scared. She realized that it was a failure. Larissa was very scared, and so she screamed, calling Evan father. Evan remained silent in surprise and was even afraid to turn around. He asked again because Lissa had called him that before, and she didn't understand why he was so surprised now. Lissa thought that if he suddenly didn't like this kind of treatment, she would simply keep quiet. But he said that he needed it and saw no reason to be dissatisfied. The girl also said that she wanted to ask, can she go with him? Evan didn't understand at all why she wanted to go with him. Lissa just wanted to show how sick she was by coughing demonstratively. She didn't even know how to explain it to him. So first, she said that they said it would rain later, and she was worried that he would catch a cold while riding. But it will definitely rain. She realized that this was a complete failure. Then I decided to say that the reason was completely different, because they are now a family. Lissa just wants to be closer to Evan. In response, he ran his hand over her and simply looked at her. Lissa immediately thought that it didn't work, but he told her to sit next to him. The girl was surprised and asked again, and he repeated that she should sit down first. Then Lissa realized that this was a success. She offered him her hand, a little afraid of riding in the carriage alone with Evan. But it's better than if he noticed that Lissa was feeling better. It was a little difficult for Lissa to ride next to him because she was afraid of him. Evan keeps turning to her with that depressing expression on his face. It was some kind of psychological pressure. She needs to show him in time that she is coughing up blood, but for now she just needs to chat with him and then we'll see how it goes. Lissa said that she was about to see Evan for the first time and asked if he knew that he was married. The father replied that he didn't know yet, and Lissa simply understood him. She noted that it would be nice to do it right after graduating from the academy. That's just great. Well, that's the fate of the weak, to submit to the strong. Evan uses his son as a pawn to gain unlimited power. Lissa noted that she would like to get along with him. He asked why this was so, and she did not expect it at all. She didn't even understand what difference it made to him. She just decided to flatter him a little. Smiling, Lissa said that she was sure that Evan was just like his father. The Duke was very handsome, even a little mysterious. Only then did Lissa notice that the Duke smiled slightly. She realized that she needed to continue to free him with compliments. Lissa said that she would like to live happily with him and her father. After that, she finally started coughing, and it worked just in time. She said that there was nothing wrong with it, that she had been like this since childhood. Lissa also asked for forgiveness and decided to make the most pitiful expression on her face. If Evan asks if she's in pain, she'll answer with a pitiful look that she's fine. He asked her to tell him what her desire to live happily with the Duke and Evan meant. Evan wants to understand what exactly she means by this. He asked her how she imagined it. Lissa was surprised because he should have asked first if she was okay. She explained that she said it out of politeness because she was scared. Evan wondered what happiness meant to her. Happiness is when there is a joyful reason to celebrate, and in difficult times people comfort each other. If something funny happens, they laugh together and care about each other. These little things are happiness. Lissa had no family in her life, and besides, she never discussed such things with anyone. She blurted out the first thing that came to mind and said all this because she felt strange. Perhaps it is because in her soul she really does have that very gold that she talks about. Evan noted that she probably had such little things in County Rostri. In fact, this is not about this county at all. Her father, the Count, was busy with business and rarely appeared at home. Larissa's older brother was exiled to the Eastern Cabinet under the pretext of studying abroad, and this happened only because he contradicted his father, and Lissa said that this was not so. Her father was constantly absent from home, but he interrupted her and said that he understood everything. Lissa dreamed of living differently in a new family. When she first met Evan, she wanted to make an impression and doesn't know what would have happened to her if it weren't for him. Evan became her real savior. Therefore, she is ready to do everything in her power. After some time, he took out a half-ton bottle, but Lissa did not understand why he did this. She asked again, and he replied that she couldn't vomit on her own again because it was dirty. He'd stain it with blood and it would have been disgusting. Lissa thinks that he considers other people's blood dirty. She pretended to be very grateful to him, but she understood that there was no other way out. This way, she would better show him that she was ill. She said she would use his help and was very grateful, but he noted that it was only a temporary flow. Still, Lissa was sincerely grateful and admitted that her father never gave her anything. Evan was surprised by these words. They announced that they had arrived, and the girl saw for the first time the academy for obtaining basic knowledge from which her possible future was graduating. She earns less than she previously imagined. Children from wealthy families are usually homeschooled. Then the gentleman asked the coachman to take his place. He said that when he went on a mission, he had something important to do. The girl turned around and heard him say, "The coachman must order 100 handkerchiefs of the highest quality." This is probably why she vomits blood more and more often. Evan Renaud Eckerd is the only son of Duke Eckerd. He is a very attractive young man like his father, but he grew up without him and Evan became like a soulless doll. When his first wife died, he did not shed a tear. He never had a normal marriage, even with the princesses his father found for him. Sooner or later, they began to cheat on him. She read this story and knew about it only by hearsay. Princess Ella, a dissatisfied and distinguished personality, initiated a divorce law to end her marriage with her husband. Elani forced the villain to deal with the enemy and then escaped with the main character. If Larissa had known that she would become a member of the Eckerd family, she would have read this book more carefully. She couldn't check because the teenager in front of her was her husband. And that guy was Evan Renaud Eckerd. He really was an exact copy of his father. If you looked closely, they were like two peas in a pod. She didn't know who this girl with pink hair was. The father said that it was his wife, and she did not understand at all why this flag was accepted without explanation. The guy said that everything was clear to him. He simply understood everything. He added that everything was fine, and that he was definitely a year younger, but the girl couldn't understand why he was so tall. He was handsome, but she didn't make a good impression. She even looked older than her age. They say that a person who looks older than his age as a child will later as an adult look younger than his peers. She introduced Ivana and congratulated him on graduating from the academy. He was just a boy without emotions because he didn't react to her in any way. She couldn't expect anything from a man who didn't care whether his wife died or had an affair with someone else. And what did he say so that the hacked one would receive a letter from his son's teacher? That's all. He needed to know why he had fought with Viscount Jerry's son. The girl became interested when she heard this, and he added that due to his injuries, he had been bedridden for 3 weeks. The girl was in shock. 3 weeks at home, and he was in quite a bit of pain. The guy said he just lied to him. He called him a friend and then cursed and gossiped about him behind his back. He hid him because he didn't want to be a friend of a man like that. He said he hated liars, especially those who only pretend to be his friend. He was upset, and she thought that he never hated or cared about anyone but her. His father said he understood everything, but Evan was still upset, and his father wasn't even angry. After all, he hit someone. The father simply said that a child who treats friendship frivolously should be punished properly. Now he's shown himself to be a real bully. The father said that he understood everything, but he had to make friends with this girl. He wanted them to get along together and to take care of each other. Larissa wondered if she would be able to survive at all if she didn't try to get along with him. If he ever hits her, she won't be able to stand up for at least 3 months. And this is definitely unacceptable. So she said that she would like to get along with him too. She thought that he didn't even realize how much she wanted to meet him and suggested that they become a good couple. She pretended that he agreed and smiled at him. He was very surprised, turned away, and simply said that he agreed. After this, they told her to get into the carriage quickly. The girl was surprised to notice that the guy's back was slightly red, so this is probably a good sign. The father told the boy that it was already late and it was time for Larissa to go and rest. After that, Evan turned to the guy and said that he should only go with him. At this time, Larissa began to cough and Evan noticed it. After that, he just turned around and left. Then Larissa began to complain about the fruits of the oclasia. She needed to drink them urgently. She hasn't eaten them yet today. Larissa only started eating the fruit and noticed that she was getting much better. At this rate, she will be completely cured in 5 years. This is still the best place for her recovery only. She needs to hold on somehow. First, Larissa decided to make a plan. The plan is how to survive here, save money, and leave. It is neat and safe, but a very long way. The plan is to stay with them and live quietly, better that way than trying to seize power over the imperial family. But if she doesn't live up to expectations, she will certainly be hated, and she is sure that her liver and gallbladder will be taken away. Even though she was in a shady family when Seymour offered to pay off all her debts at the funeral, it felt like salvation. It would be easier if Larissa could understand what his motives are, but she has no way of finding out. This is all a dangerous game with her life at stake, so she has to be careful. Then Larissa decided to follow the plan. Save up money and make a splash. She had no idea what those stacks of books were in her room. Now that Evan is here, they want her to study. For a while, Lissa just lazed around, but when she picked up the book, she realized that it was not so simple. It said that if his mother were around, she would read him a story until he fell asleep. When he behaved well, she would gently stroke his head, and they would enjoy their favorite food together. These moments brought them both peace and warmth, making their bond stronger every day. Lissa realized that this wasn't just a book in front of her, it was a diary. However, she couldn't understand how Evan's personal belongings ended up in her room because it seemed very strange and unexpected. She felt that something was wrong. Even though Evan didn't look any older than his age, there was still a childish innocence about him, which made the situation even more mysterious. He was still a child who needed love and care, and from the very beginning he showed a warm attitude towards others. This was evident in his actions and look. On ordinary days, nothing disturbed him. He lived peacefully, but on holidays, when everyone around was happy, he felt a deep loneliness and melancholy that squeezed his heart. In addition, Lissa herself in her past life acutely felt a thirst for love and understanding, and therefore could especially strongly empathize with Evan's condition, which made their connection even deeper. Someone entered the room and Lissa immediately thought it was Lissa. She expected to at least hear a knock because that's how people usually behave when entering someone else's space. But when the girl saw Evan enter, she was very surprised as she did not expect to see him here and did not understand the reason for his sudden appearance. Evan wondered if he had to knock to enter his own room, which further emphasized his timidity and lack of confidence in simple things. Lissa remembered that she had heard about such a question about a week ago, but then she did not attach any importance to it and did not think that it could have any special meaning. He asked if this meant that she considered the room hers, although in fact it was his space. She didn't even suspect that the glasses were lying to the side and the shelves were almost empty. The room seemed like a forgotten place where many things were left without attention, as if no one had lived here for a long time and didn't care about the order. However, she was still not ready to share this space with a boy despite the fact that he was only 13 years old. The thought of living together caused her mixed feelings, from uncertainty to slight anxiety. Evan noticed that it was more convenient for them to live together in one room at the moment and suggested that they accept this necessity as a given. He understood that it was temporary, but there was no other way. He also hinted at the need to discuss something important, and Lissa, with a slight smile, showed interest in what would be discussed. Her curiosity was sincere, and she waited for an explanation. In a calm voice, Evan said that even if they had to sleep in the same bed, he had no plans to have children yet. This statement surprised her and made her wonder about the seriousness of his words. Lissa was so surprised by what she heard that she asked loudly, as if trying to make sure she had understood correctly. It seemed unexpected and a little shocking to her. Evan explained that he wasn't ready for a child yet. They needed to grow up and learn to take responsibility first. He wanted them to be confident in their future and their decisions. She was in complete shock, not knowing how to react to such revelations. It all seemed new and unexpected to her, and she was not ready to accept it right away. He said that after the wedding, they should not hold hands to avoid premature consequences. This idea seemed strange and a little scary to him because he could not immediately understand its meaning. At that time, Evan thought that Lissa was simply not familiar with such rules and traditions, so he decided to explain everything in advance so that there would be no misunderstandings between them later. He explained that if they hold hands or sleep next to each other after marriage, they might have a child. This requires a serious approach and full responsibility on their part. Evan himself was a little surprised, and as if he heard such words for the first time because they were just starting to grow up and were not ready for such serious changes in life. Discussing such topics with a serious expression seemed truly unusual and strange, as if they were talking about something completely new and unexpected for themselves. Lissa felt that they were now entering a new stage in their lives together, which would bring many changes and require them to grow up and make new decisions. Evan noted that they came to an agreement because they had become more mature and were ready for life together. It was an important step for both of them. He also told her to wash up and go to bed, reminding her that she was no longer alone in this room and that they needed to get used to living together. Evan was still haunted by the memory of Matilda. His thoughts kept returning to her image as if he hoped to see in her some answer, some consolation, some forgotten farewell. The book he held in his hands looked complex and heavy, not only in content, but also in spirit. It seemed to breathe wisdom inaccessible to everyone and immediately inspired respect for what was written. Strangely, after this, Larissa decided to look into his diary. She was drawn closer to him. She sincerely wanted to find a common language with Evan and feel that he trusted her. It all started when Larissa, smiling, remarked that everything would be fine with her. Then she asked with a slight mockery why he was studying again since he had only recently graduated from the academy. Her gesture was warm, running her hand over his head as if encouraging him. This moment seemed especially important with its approval and concern, and something almost familial. Larissa noted with interest that although he was younger than her, he had amazing persistence and talent. This really amazed her because not everyone at his age is so goal-oriented. Evan blushed visibly at her words. He was embarrassed by the attention, especially because hearing praise from her lips was exciting for him. He didn't know how to react to it. The next morning, Larissa, with a slight smile, offered him to try the very cake she had spoken about earlier. She thought it would be a pleasant surprise for him. Evan muttered discreetly that he didn't like sweets, but Larissa knew perfectly well that he was pretending. It was obvious that in reality, he was simply embarrassed to admit his weaknesses. When Larissa brought the cake, his eyes suddenly lit up with joy, but she decided not to insist. She just watched. Either he would try it or not, it all depended on his desire. Then Larissa noted, "If he doesn't like it, then there's no point in forcing him." She touched his head again, but this time he barely reacted. He looked absent-minded and lost in his thoughts. Larissa became curious about what he was so engrossed in, and she looked at the papers on his desk. It turned out that he was reading not a book, as she thought, but a detailed article. When Evan noticed her looking, he tensed a little, thinking that maybe he had done something wrong. But it turned out that it was just an article about the 500th anniversary of the ancient race. It was on that day that Seymour, the man who would become the hero of an entire era, made his first public appearance. His looks, manners, and energy seemed too bright for the world around him. It was then that Seymour hit the jackpot. He won a substantial amount of money at the races, becoming the only one to guess the outcome of the race. This victory immediately attracted attention to him. Larissa, having learned about this event, decided that she could not miss it. It seemed to her that it was there that the rare chance she had been clinging to for so long would open up. Even if Evan was tied to the princess for another 7 years, Larissa knew that such opportunities didn't come around often. Money could be her only salvation. Having received the required sum, she was going to disappear without leaving a trace. She had to be declared missing so that Evan could marry the princess without any obstacles. From then on, she would live somewhere quietly, far from everyone, gradually spending her savings and enjoying a simple, unclouded, free life. Evan thought that Larissa was simply interested in the races themselves. He had no idea that there was a carefully thought-out plan behind her actions. When he spoke, she raised her eyebrows in surprise and looked straight at him. It seemed she hadn't expected him to notice something important. Evan's face was focused and serious. He drew attention to the article, hinting that it contained some deep meaning. He spoke of it as if the text were not just an announcement, but a carefully coded invitation. Larissa immediately realized that his view of the article was too frank. It could give away their interest and cause unnecessary suspicion among those who were following what was happening. When she arrived, she felt a surge of inspiration. With a smile, she said that she was really interested and wanted to know if it was possible to attend this event. The guy, noticing her enthusiasm, said that since she had a desire, no one would interfere. Hearing this, she even beamed. Her joy was sincere and genuine. She then quietly added that she would have much preferred not to go alone, with the implication that in his company, the occasion would have been truly special. He thought for a moment, looking away, and then reluctantly admitted that he really had nothing to do in the evenings lately. That's why he could go with her, not only to keep her company, but also to help her take her mind off her worries, to feel that her days were filled with meaning and not empty worries. Horse racing has always been an important part of social life, especially among the aristocracy, and attending it was not just a pleasant pastime, but something like a confirmation of one's status and position in society. In addition, he does not feel uncomfortable in noisy and crowded places. On the contrary, such fuss seems to fill him with energy and helps him feel more alive, collected, and self-confident. In addition to being able to understand papers and accounts, he is also quite knowledgeable about horses. He knows the breeds, distinguishes between harnesses, and can differentiate between equipment for walking and that used in military campaigns. It was clear from his behavior that he wanted to go with her, but he seemed to hesitate all the time, beating around the bush as if he couldn't bring himself to say it directly, waiting for her to figure it out herself. But even if he really did go with her, she was still ready to earn money on her own without help. The path would just become a little more difficult, but certainly not impassable. Realizing that hints were not leading to anything, she decided to ask a direct question. Would he go with her or not? Because the uncertainty was beginning to weigh him down and confuse him, preventing him from concentrating. He calmly and without further ado replied that he had already ordered the butler to prepare the carriage for the appointed hour. He had made this decision in advance without waiting for further explanations. This step was important because any delays could ruin the plans. Everything was calculated in time, and even a short delay could turn into an irreparable failure that could no longer be corrected. Since Evan had taken charge of all the arrangements, all she could do was remain calm, not interfere, and wait patiently until it was time to go, trusting that he would organize everything as needed. After these words, he headed to the library to study, although he had only recently returned from classes at the academy and had hardly rested. Out of boredom, she picked up the book again, and it was now that it became clear to her why things hadn't worked out between Lissa and Evan. They lacked real intimacy. Soon, a maid knocked on her chambers, bowing modestly and greeting her as required by palace etiquette. Lissa asked her in a reserved manner, but without a hint of irritation, why she had come, since visits without an invitation or prior warning at such a late hour were a great rarity. The maid, bowing slightly, explained that they had brought the order that had been previously placed by the Duke, the very things that he had asked to be delivered without any delay. This statement caused Lissa a slight bewilderment because she did not remember ordering anything, much less expecting any parcels or goods at such a strange time. A memory of a conversation popped into her head when she heard in passing that the Duke had placed a strange order, a large batch of scarves, and in clearly excessive quantities. She remembered how he had confidently ordered exactly 100 handkerchiefs made of very fine material, as if he intended to fill every corner of the house with them. When she finally saw them at first, she couldn't even believe her eyes. Such a quantity of exquisite things looked out of place, almost ridiculous against the backdrop of their circumstances. If she had even the slightest opportunity to exchange this luxury for money, she would have agreed without hesitation, because the debt still weighed on her shoulders like a stone slab. Each handkerchief seemed like a symbol of gold spent, but despite this, she felt genuine gratitude to Evan for this strange but generous act. She firmly decided that she would definitely find a way to thank him, not with routine politeness, but sincerely, truly putting all the warmth of her soul into it. Then she ordered a clean card to be brought because she was going to write a letter to her father to express her gratitude for that recent, unexpected but touching gift. After some time, Lissa quietly knocked on her father's office door and carefully asked if she could come in, not wanting to disturb him if he was busy with important matters. Having received permission, she entered and curiously asked if he was really going somewhere because it had not been mentioned before. Father briefly replied that he was busy at the moment, and if anyone wanted to take a day off during such a busy period, they first needed to sort out the accumulated paperwork. Lissa was a little confused when she saw that her father was going to go somewhere. She did not expect this at all, and for a moment she felt lost because no one told her about such plans. But then she decided that this was probably an adult matter and she didn't need to know where he was going, especially if it concerned work or personal matters that she shouldn't interfere with. She said that she received from him the very same scarves that he ordered especially for her, and now she wants to express her gratitude by making a card for him with her own hands. At first, the father did not understand what kind of a postcard he had in his hands, but after looking more closely, he noticed how much care, effort, and warmth there was in it. It was not just a drawing, but an expression of her feelings. Antosha, noticing the postcard, suddenly stopped. Something in this simple image touched her to the depths of her soul, as if she saw something important in it, even if not entirely clear. He asked with genuine interest whether Lissa had really drawn these 3 children herself. The drawing was naive, but very kind and sincere. It felt like it was made from the heart. The girl explained that the picture depicted Duke Evan, and next to him were three people who got along well with each other. They never quarreled, and there was always peace and understanding in their company. The card was originally blank, without any words or inscriptions. That's why Lissa decided it would be better to draw a picture, because this way the gift would be more personal and heartfelt. She felt that the drawing was not very neat, and she was worried that her father might be upset about it. Perhaps he would consider her efforts insufficient or inept. Lissa felt that she might have gone too far. Embarrassment overwhelmed her, and she wanted to apologize, hoping that her father would notice her sincerity and not get angry over such a trifle. But he seemed to sense her anxiety in advance. It seemed to him that she wanted to say something else, but stopped as if not daring to continue the phrase she had started or afraid of seeming intrusive. Then Lissa slowly turned her head in his direction. She looked at him carefully as if trying to understand whether he was really listening to her and wanted to hear what she was so afraid to say. He just chuckled and said that she was acting strange, like something was wrong with her, and now he was even curious about what exactly was going on. Lissa sincerely did not understand whether this simple child's drawing could have caused such a strong reaction in him and led to irritation. So, deciding not to make things worse, she quietly said that she apologized and would not draw anymore if it made him feel that way. Then he reminded her that the drawing depicted the three of them, and it was not just a drawing, but rather a hint from her about something important. He remembered that Lissa herself had said how she wanted to spend a day with them in nature, go on a picnic together, and it seemed that this meant a lot to her. It became clear to him that she often threw words out without thinking about how they might sound to others. This discovery was unpleasant for him, like a sudden blow he had not expected. The thought flashed through his mind that she seriously believed that he had taken the day off specifically to fulfill her wish. This guess hurt him because it seemed as if he had no will of his own. She tried to justify her behavior by mentioning dizziness and slight nausea, but hesitated as if she was gathering strength inside to say something much more serious and important. She wanted to tell him that in 2 days she was going to the races with Evan. Unlike previous trips this time, everything was planned in advance, and she even chose what she would wear in advance. She really wanted him to go with them, but he said he was already busy, and he wasn't going to change his plans even if he really wanted to. There was regret in his voice, but he was firm. After some thought, he decided to join. He had doubted it a while ago, but now he no longer hesitated. For some reason, this decision brought him relief, as if he had relieved some inner tension. He announced his decision calmly, as if it were something insignificant. His manner showed that he did not care about the races for him. It was just a trip. Nothing more, nothing less. He would not go to such an event without a good reason, but if a child, especially a seriously ill one, asked him to, he would definitely not refuse and would go without any doubts. Lissa, hearing this, immediately perked up. She did not hide her joy. Her face seemed to light up, and it was clear she was looking forward to this trip with impatience, and it was really important to her. The gentleman looking at her noticed that Lissa was too noisy. He said this without irritation, as if he had simply voiced a thought that had suddenly come to his mind and had not caused any particular emotion. Lissa immediately began to apologize haltingly and a little awkwardly, but suddenly she began to cough as if her body itself had decided to interrupt the flow of words, not allowing her to say something she might regret. She left the room at the exact moment she had previously considered opportune. It seemed as if she had calculated it all in advance. Every movement, every step, every second of her departure. Already on the way out, she said that she had to go urgently. There was determination in her voice, as if this was an important matter and it could not be postponed even for a minute, no matter how much she wanted to. She had to leave before anyone noticed that something was wrong with her. Before the signs became visible, like her body losing strength and the blood draining, leaving an emptiness. Lately, he really had nothing to do. Emptiness filled the days, and he seemed to have lost his bearings in the flow of identical hours. He thought he knew how to carry on conversations normally, but at moments like these, he suddenly realized how awkward his own phrases sounded. He tried to comprehend what exactly she was doing and why he had said all this at all. He could not remember any clear reasons. He should have just said straight out that he wanted to go with her. He doesn't know anything about betting, but horse riding is something he knows. If Lissa finds out about this, she will definitely think that he is pretending and lying, considering all this a pathetic attempt to hide hypocrisy. He imagined her telling him with cold frankness that he always said he couldn't stand lies, but he did the opposite. But in reality, the only one who lied here was him, and this realization made something heavy and unpleasant squeeze in his chest. That's why he really hoped that things wouldn't come to this, otherwise everything he built would collapse, and he would have to pay for the deception. The only way out was to turn the lie into truth to make sure that no one even guessed what had happened. Evan knew everything about racing, from the history of the breed to the intricacies of training racehorses. He understood horse behavior, how to handle them, and understood hippology. He absorbed all the information in a matter of hours, promising himself that he would figure it all out in 2 days, and he actually kept his word. At night, he could not sleep. Thoughts and worries interfered with rest, which is why he felt exhausted and broken in the morning. When he and Lissa were riding in the carriage, he felt sick. There was pressure in his chest, and everything inside was in a jumble, causing nausea. Lissa called him, saying that they had already arrived at the hippodrome. This happened at the moment when he was struggling with a slight dizziness, trying to collect his thoughts and not lose his balance. She immediately felt that something was wrong with him. His face was pale, and his gaze seemed to avoid meeting her eyes, looking away somewhere. This made her wary and thoughtful. Lissa pointed out that there was no point in worrying, even if he was worried. In response, an awkward smile appeared on his face, as if he had been caught off guard and in an awkward position. She then noted with a slight smile that even if they held hands tightly, they still would not have children, hinting at the oddities of their marriage and the fact that something was not working out between them. He understood all this, but still felt a little embarrassed by her closeness and the unusual tone in which she said it. He felt a little uneasy because of such frankness. To distract himself, he began to tell her about horses, listing which of them had longer legs and which had stronger muscles, describing in detail the differences between the race horses, as if immersing himself in his favorite hobby. His father was always sure that he learned all this at the academy because he knew much more than could be learned simply from books. This showed that he was a real expert. His love for horses had not been so obvious before, but now it was obvious to everyone, and Lissa understood why he wanted to go to the races so much. It was part of his real passion. The racecourse manager was greatly surprised to see the Duke arrive earlier than expected, and this visibly agitated him. An unexpected appearance always threw plans into disarray. He hurried up to the Duke, greeted him with respect, and mentioned that he had heard about the imminent marriage of the Duke's son. The manager clearly wanted to establish good relations with the important guest. The Duke was of high status, and as soon as he appeared, the steward came out personally to show his respect and greet him as the most important visitor of the day. Evan thanked him for his concern, gave his name, and introduced his wife, who was standing next to him, in a reserved but respectful manner. Lissa responded politely, and at that moment, you could see how Evan became embarrassed calling her his wife. It still sounded unusual for him. The manager, watching them, remembered how long it had been since she had seen such a touching couple. Reserved but harmonious, they made a rare impression. It was surprising to her that most of them only knew about them from stories, and now finally she could meet this unusual married couple face to face. Lissa felt a little nervous because this was her first time out with Evan's family. Everything around her seemed new and almost solemn, as if a whole new world was opening up before her, full of unknown rules and expectations. Even though things weren't really smooth between them, those around them saw them as a model couple. It seemed that there was harmony between them, and they were a real happy family, which created a pleasant and cozy atmosphere around them. This feeling made Lissa happy, even if in reality everything was more complicated. But seeing that she was accepted and considered part of the family brought warmth and peace. At such moments, she forgot about doubts and felt needed and important. One of the men, showing interest, began to tell about the rules of the races, explaining that the excitement increases significantly if you place a bet. He assured that it is precisely participation that adds a special liveliness to the spectacle and makes the process even more exciting. The Duke made it clear at once that he did not like such entertainment. He had come only to support his daughter-in-law and to do his duty without any undue interest in the races themselves or the bets, remaining an emotionless observer. In contrast, Evan admitted that he was thinking about betting on Berto Arabos or Khalid, as he had been following their performances for a long time. He believed that both had good chances, and that is why he was ready to take a risk and try to win. The man noted that Evan clearly had a good knowledge of horses. Not everyone would bet on such rare favorites, and this showed that Evan really understood racing and knew how to assess the odds correctly. There was another man standing to the side, silently watching what was happening. His gaze was intense and thoughtful, as if he suspected something or was trying to understand what was hidden behind the external calm and words of those around him. His attention was suddenly drawn to the child next to Evan. The facial features resembled someone, and he realized that this was undoubtedly the daughter of Eckhard himself. This man was none other than the head of the guild, and he immediately recognized in the girl the child of the Rostri couple who had died quite recently under tragic circumstances, he thought. The Countess Eckhard's wife died in an accident, leaving her daughter without protection, and the Duke was going to take her under his guardianship, but the intervention of his wife's friends made the girl his daughter-in-law. A man like the Duke would hardly allow himself to be swayed by any sentimental ideas or emotions. That would be too weak a position for him. Evan's engagement to Lissa could have played an important role. It would have made it easier to influence the actions of the faction that opposed the aristocratic council, but despite this, the Duke used his son as a pawn in the game without particularly caring how effective this use turned out to be in reality. Obviously, there must be a deeper reason behind such behavior than just a desire to make life difficult for his son, something thoughtful and important. He did this not because he wanted to, but because he understood that otherwise he would have to sit with his hands folded, and he was not ready for that. To truly understand what exactly the Duke had in mind, you need to get to know Lissa as closely as possible, her character habits, and even small habits. From that moment on, it became obligatory to keep an eye on the girl and regularly convey to the Duke everything that happened in her life, even if it seemed insignificant. Lissa found it difficult to explain why a chill suddenly ran down her spine, like a premonition or an anxious feeling that came out of nowhere. Evan asked how she felt, and Lissa, without delving too deeply into her feelings, said that she felt something strange, but she herself could not explain why exactly this happened. When they were given the tickets, Lissa suddenly asked Evan for some money, although she was surprised by this impulse and hoped that he would not misunderstand her request or be offended. He noticed that she didn't have any money with her, and Lissa nodded in confirmation. She had left the house very lightly, without even taking her wallet with her, and not expecting to spend much. The girl explained that she was going to make a small bet for fun, so she hoped for Evan's help, promising to definitely return the money later as soon as she could. The father decided that the butler might be refusing her because Lissa was still considered too young and did not have the right to manage her own money. Despite this, Lissa felt a slight irritation and annoyance because she did not have even a small amount for small expenses. This caused her inconvenience and an unpleasant feeling. At that moment, the Duke began to think that this simple request most likely contained something more than just the girl's need. Perhaps it was a sign or a hint that was worth paying attention to. Then he presented her with a small gold object, either a medallion or a coin, which could have served as a symbol of gratitude for her efforts or some kind of encouragement. Lissa was sure that she had not done anything outstanding, but he gently objected, showing that her efforts and attention were indeed of greater value than she thought. The Duke said the gift was given to her by her father in response to a touching drawing she had made especially for him on a card. The gesture had deep personal meaning and was a sign of affection. At that moment, she realized that her drawing had really impressed her father. This caused her to feel genuine joy and gratitude for such an unexpected and valuable gift that touched her heart. Evan promised to discuss with the butler the possibility of allocating a small amount from the family budget so that she could manage funds for personal needs and not depend on outside help. Even though she was still a minor, her last name was already Eckhard, and this gave her the right to have at least a little money for small expenses, which was important for her independence. Then the father admitted that there was nothing unusual in the fact that a girl should be able to manage her own money because this is part of her growing up and independence. She asked for details, and he explained that if she needed money, she would just have to draw something new, and her father would pay for it, supporting her creative efforts. The girl understood what this meant. Her father was willing to pay for her drawings, even if they looked like childish scribbles, which was a sign of his faith and support, despite their simplicity. Soon, a young man approached them with an offer to take part in a bet, inviting them to try their luck and add excitement to their evening. They agreed, and Lissa expressed her determination to put absolutely everything on the line, leaving not a single coin in reserve, showing unusual courage and confidence. Evan was a little surprised and asked again if she was sure about this decision, because putting everything on one horse was always considered too risky and unjustified a step. However, Lissa insisted on her own explaining that this is exactly what she wanted to do because she spends other people's money without much thought and is not afraid to take risks. Then he noticed that for her, it all seemed like a game of chance in which the stakes did not matter. At first, Lissa decided that he was just joking with such words and did not attach much importance to them, thinking that he wanted to irritate her or test her reaction. Despite the deep doubts inside, she still decided to listen to her father. She knew very well that arguing with him was pointless. It was like arguing with a storm that left no chance of victory. She was aware of the risk she was taking, but the desire to win was stronger than her fear. After all, there was a huge amount of money at stake that could completely change their lives and the fate of the family. At the center of the action was Seymour Gold, a man for whom money was the meaning of life. He became the symbol of a huge deal and an object of admiration among the local elite. Despite his wealth, his origins did not allow him to become part of the real nobility. He remained a commoner, always remaining outside the circle of high society. Seymour threw himself into business, hoping that work and success would help him one day cross the threshold of a world inaccessible to many and become equal to the elite. His first major success came at the racetrack. It was there that he first felt the taste of big money and the excitement of a real game, which captivated him greatly. The woman he was dealing with disgusted him, but for the sake of profit he was ready to put up with it and even share the profits despite his internal rejection. She was in a hurry, as if she wanted to get ahead of luck, hoping that the bet would pay off and her plans would work out as planned without giving time to doubt. At that moment, Evan approached Lissa and calmly informed her that the horse she had bet on had unexpectedly finished first, bringing her long-awaited victory. The black stallion, whom no one considered the favorite, became the winner of the race, surprising everyone present and changing the course of events in an instant. No one believed in this horse or bet on it, and yet the winnings amounted to a staggering 68,024 gold coins, a sum that many could only dream of. The event was astonishing. No one had ever won such money before, and the news of the win instantly spread throughout the area, arousing keen interest. Although the result was unexpected, two people backed the same horse, causing surprise and heated discussions among those watching the race. Evan wondered who was the second to choose this particular horse, because he was sure that his bet would be the only one and unique of its kind. The man he spoke to explained that it was a girl of only 18 years old who had made her own choice and decided to take a risk for the sake of a big win. Lissa immediately realized that they were talking about Seymour, feeling that her presence at the races was not accidental and that there were deeper motives behind it. Timur will undoubtedly be upset that the prize will have to be divided, because the girl is clearly acting not only for the sake of fair play, but rather for personal, not always good reasons. The next day's newspapers would probably devote lengthy articles to this event, and Lissa was almost certain that her photo would end up on the front pages of the publications. Since the win was so big, Evan decided not to delay and immediately wrote her a check for 34,012 gold coins, splitting the win and the profit equally. She asked the man to wait a moment, carefully approached him and said something important, then mentioned her daughter. There was anxiety and excitement in her voice, as if there was something more at stake than just words. He replied that he understood everything, and as a sign of respect and agreement, he promised to fulfill her request. His tone was calm and confident, as if he had already made this decision a long time ago and was not going to back down. The other people standing nearby could not understand why she had even entered into a conversation with this man, and what kind of strange story was going on here. For them, it all seemed incomprehensible and even a little suspicious. Soon, someone dared to ask what had really happened. Then she took out a gold coin from her pocket and handed it to her father, as if conveying a symbol of her gratitude and hope. She admitted that thanks to this coin a lot has changed in her life, and now she wants to repay the debt that she has long carried in her soul, expressing her deep gratitude. Her voice trembled with intense gratitude because it was that very gold coin that had once given her luck and changed her destiny, opening new doors and opportunities that she could not even dream of. She returned the coin to her father with the hope that now it would bring him the same luck and happiness that she had once experienced, as if passing on part of her destiny and faith in a better future. Her father responded with a warm smile, and at that moment Lissa felt that it was this look that she had been waiting for most of all, a look that could give her strength and confidence to move forward. The man calmly confirmed his agreement and took the coin with a slight smile. There was a firm determination in his gaze, as if he had already decided in advance that this was how it should be and would not back down even a step. He added warmly that the lady was not only intelligent, as everyone said, but also had a soft heart that could genuinely care for people, which made her not only worthy, but truly rare. She had heard rumors that the Duke had chosen her as his wife not out of love but out of duty or in memory of the past. This worried the girl a little, because she wanted there to be more between them than just an obligation. The Duke said that his wife and the girl's mother were not just acquaintances, but were bound by a strong friendship that spanned years and generations, strengthening the ties between the two families. The man noted that arranging a marriage between the children of such families was not an easy matter, requiring great patience and diplomacy, because there was much more to it than just feelings or ordinary consent. But this union looked dignified, calm, confident, and respectful of traditions. He thereby subtly praised the Duke, noting his experience and tact. The manager approached her with concern, gently asking if she was comfortable there, if she had time to feel like a part of their home. He was not the only one who knew how to choose his words charmingly and politely. There were plenty of those in this house who knew how to charm, so she began to explain with a smile and confidence that she felt great, as if she had become a real talisman in the Eckards' house. The manager noted with genuine pride how happy he was to be next to her, because together with Evan, they looked like a real rarity. Then she, a little embarrassed, began to tell that, to be completely frank, everything turned out to be not as simple as it might seem. Lissa felt truly happy, not because of her luck, but because she became part of the Duke's noble family, where she was finally accepted with warmth. The man noted that if he were next to her, he would also consider the Duke the best. With such a person nearby, it is easy to be confident in the future. The Duke had an innate sense of people's characters and intentions. He unmistakably sensed who stood before him. That is why he had no doubt. Their union would be strong based on trust and kindness. When Lissa heard this, she was truly surprised. Such words sounded unexpected and as if alien, because, in her opinion, what was happening did not correspond to these feelings or the described relationship. The Duke noted that he did not allow himself to joke with his loved ones, and the man who heard this froze in surprise. Such simple phrases conveyed a firm confidence and seriousness that he had not expected at all. In response, the man said that everyone was having a great time, and so he decided to joke, hoping that his humor would be received correctly and supported by those around him to create a light atmosphere. But instead of the expected laughter, there was silence. This silence betrayed how inappropriate the joke was. It became awkward, and the man clearly realized his mistake at that moment. To somehow rectify the situation, he tried to joke again, this time about the Korean alphabet, saying that sometimes it is better to stand still than to make an effort, and he himself chuckled, realizing the absurdity of the words. Lissa was completely confused. The room suddenly became dull and tense, as if someone had said something inappropriate. She felt glances directed at her sideways, and she felt awkward. Suddenly, the tension broke as the manager laughed, as if breaking the formality of the moment. His loud, sincere laugh sounded warm, and he smiled as he noted that the joke had been a great success. Only then did Lissa realize that she had lost. She had been too quick to believe she was right, and now she had to swallow her disappointment. She would do better to be more careful next time. Although the estate loved fun, there was a line here. Friendliness should not turn into freedom. Jokes were not welcomed if there was no respect behind them. She was genuinely happy when her father lifted her spirits with jokes. At such moments, she felt real warmth, and she did not understand why this happened so rarely at home. Most of all, Lissa dreamed of bringing back the lightness that once existed in the house. Her heart ached for laughter. The coziness had become less with the years, and she hoped that it was still possible to change it. She suddenly felt like she might cough, and this suddenly scared her. Now, when everyone was paying attention to her, she couldn't let anyone suspect illness. She slowly turned to the side, carefully pulled out her handkerchief, and almost imperceptibly covered her mouth. Her movements were careful so that no one would suspect anything strange. Returning home, Lissa heard Lissa joyfully rushing towards her, her eyes shining with happiness. She enthusiastically told how everyone already knew about the win and how big the sum was. Lissa modestly replied that she was simply incredibly lucky, and everything that happened was like a random gift of fate for which she was grateful. Lissa sincerely congratulated her, adding that the lady, despite her joy, looked tired because the day had been busy and difficult. Lissa admitted that she feels like a person from the front pages, and she is pleased that Lissa helped her get herself in order. It became a little easier. Evan had a bright red tie, and everyone around said that red suited Lissa very well. Everyone thought that they were a charming and harmonious couple. Lissa noted that they seemed to be made for each other and added that she would tell the butler to increase the budget a little. The lady urgently needed to be ordered a new red dress. Then the maid carefully asked what the mistress was going to spend the money she had won on, since such sums rarely come out of the blue. Lissa did not rule out that Lissa could be a spy for the Duke, so in her presence she tried to speak more carefully and not to show excessive trust. Lissa mentioned that she hadn't yet decided what to spend the money on, since such easy money was rare, so it would be better to buy something useful. At some point she thought that perhaps it would be right to give this money to an orphanage. That way it would bring more benefit. Then the maid remarked with a smile that the mistress was too kind and always thought about others, even when it came to money. Lissa just shrugged her shoulders because she herself was an orphan, so in some ways she was simply talking about herself without adding anything extra. After this, the maid added that Madame Mathilde also had a bright character and did many good deeds. Mathilde often donated money to charity and genuinely cared for people, especially children and the sick. She had amazing luck and shared it with anyone who needed it without expecting anything in return. In her soft words, in every gesture and look, one could feel a special care. Lissa reminded one of that very nurse who is always there when things are bad, ready to listen, support, understand without words. Madame Mathilde, if she were alive, would immediately appreciate this subtle warmth of Larissa's soul, would see in her something special that makes a person closer than just a relative, almost a kindred spirit. The Duke's mansion was like a museum, cold, impressive, as if permeated with ancient discipline, while Larissa's house, on the contrary, breathed life. It was light and warm, as if the walls themselves were smiling. The young gentleman entered the corridor suddenly, his appearance taking everyone by surprise. No one even suspected that he could return so early and without warning, like a shadow from the past. Lissa immediately began to explain the situation. She had warned him not to enter that part of the house because at that very moment she was changing clothes and did not expect that anyone would decide to enter. She noticed how the maid's lips trembled. Her face turned pale. Her gaze dimmed. Something Lissa said caused her a strange anxiety, as if it had touched something deeply personal. And then Lissa understood. It was not worth remembering the late Duchess in his presence. Mathilde's name still hurt, was too fresh, too painful to pronounce it out loud in his presence. The maid immediately apologized guiltily, lowering her eyes and trying to smooth over the situation. But Lissa waved her hand lightly, saying that nothing terrible had happened and there was no need to worry about it. She approached the bathroom and noticed that he was reading something new. She was surprised that he was immersed in reading again, as if discovering something important and unusual. Later, she noticed that the book he was reading seemed quite complicated. Despite this, she was surprised at how well he understood it and noted his talent and knowledge. This impressed her. He explained that he had been used to such books since childhood. For him, it was a normal thing, a part of life, and not something new or unusual. Such books helped him develop and deepen his knowledge from an early age. She realized that now she had no reason to argue or criticize him. After all, he really was diligent and had talent which deserved respect and support, not reproaches. He asked her to praise him more often, which made him feel slightly embarrassed. Inside, he was proud of his knowledge and hobbies, but he could not always speak openly about it, hiding his feelings. On the outside, he seemed cold and reserved, but in reality he was a sweet and kind person. He skillfully hid his true state and need for love under a mask of indifference. It is not surprising that he lives in a large mansion where an atmosphere of sadness and longing for Madame Mathilde reigns. Everyone around misses her, and the house is filled with memories of the past, which creates a special mood. The only person who could support him in difficult moments was his father, but even he could not always devote enough time and attention to his son, immersed in his own affairs and concerns. The father was completely busy with his work, which is why the boy was often left alone. At such moments, he felt abandoned and deprived of the necessary support, which greatly affected his internal state. In such a situation, one can understand him. Left without outside help, he learned to rely only on his inner strength and fortitude to cope with difficulties and not lose heart. Even if there is no real intimacy and mutual feelings between them, she will still treat him well because her heart is full of kindness and compassion for such people. She always had a soft spot for children who needed care and understanding. Despite his outward coldness, she saw him as a person who simply needed attention and support. She noticed that today he not only read a difficult book, but also performed well at the races, which was an unexpected discovery for her. It showed her how versatile and talented he was. Lissa noticed that he performed much better than before, almost 19 times, which surprised and pleasantly surprised her. Such progress turned out to be much more significant than she expected. She was really lucky to meet him because he was able to demonstrate not only knowledge, but also real talent, which was a real discovery for her. She acknowledged that he was a wonderful young man, and such sincere praise took her by surprise. She did not know how to respond to such unexpected warmth. Later, Lissa noted that the day was very fun, and that they should go out together more often, enjoying the attention and surprised looks of people around them. She wanted such meetings to become regular because they not only brought joy, but also brought everyone closer together, creating a special atmosphere of friendship and warmth. The next morning when Lissa woke up, she saw that he was already getting ready to leave, and this made her wonder where and why he was heading so early. She wanted to know where exactly he was rushing to in the morning, trying to understand his plans and the reasons for such early activity. He replied that he was going to the library, which surprised Lissa, because people usually don't go there at such early hours, and this made her think about his unusual schedule. Lissa asked him to come back as soon as possible, and the guy was a little upset because even though there was only a year difference between them, she still treated him like a child. He said he was 14 years old, but he doubted what that meant because in his heart he felt like an adult and didn't understand where children came from. On the way, the young man met a butler who immediately paid close attention to him. The butler greeted him with special courtesy as if a truly important person stood before him. The butler was surprised when he saw the young gentleman. In his practice, such young and at the same time serious people rarely appeared, which caused him inner delight and slight amazement. Then the butler remarked that the young man should be punctual and not be late because there was a very important matter that needed to be discussed without delay and with full dedication. The young man was curious and wanted to know what exactly this important question was. He also asked if it was possible to order the red ties that he really needed. The butler assured that he would fulfill any order if possible and specified the exact number of ties in order to prepare exactly what the young gentleman needed. This seemed unusual to the butler. Usually, young men of this kind do not pay much attention to clothes and accessories. This desire caused him some bewilderment and slight surprise. The guy explained that he wanted to get one tie of each shade, possibly about 100 different colors, so that he would have a wide choice and would always find the one that was right for him. The butler promised to immediately begin fulfilling the order, but the young man only vaguely understood what was happening around him and why events were unfolding in such a strange way. Lissa sat on the bench, enjoying the fact that she had a man who could provide her with such a huge sum of money. This gave her genuine joy and a feeling of confidence. Having received so much money, she could not hide her surprise. The amount was so large that it seemed almost unreal. This gave her a feeling of limitless possibilities. for her money was truly a source of happiness. It opened the doors to dreams and allowed her to look at life with hope and confidence. Money improved the world around her, making it brighter and more comfortable. This feeling pushed her to strive for more and live the way she wanted without limiting herself. In her mind, the idea of a luxurious house was already maturing, where everything would be done at the highest level and first class in all endeavors, so that life would become ideal. She dreamed of a life where she could not worry about anything without lifting a finger, just enjoy peace and comfort. To bring this ambitious plan to life, she urgently needed even more money. Without it, her dreams would remain just dreams. But there was another complication. It was difficult for her to remain unnoticed when she had to move, which made it difficult to implement her plans. Perhaps she needed to find someone who could do some of the work for her, freeing her from having to act on her own. At that moment, she noticed the Duke, who was nearby. She did not immediately understand why he was there, but she was interested in his presence. Lissa approached him, and the Duke began to ask what exactly brought him here and what he was doing in this place. She replied that she had simply ended up there by chance and was thinking about some important things for herself without hiding her thoughts. She thought it would be interesting to organize a horse racing tournament where family members could participate to make the time more fun and lively. Her father was not very enthusiastic, finding the activity boring, but she insisted that it was with loved ones that such entertainment took on special meaning. Every day her memory clung more and more to the faces and events connected with the people in the mansion, and she felt that she wanted to bring something new into it and change the usual course of things. So she decided that tomorrow she should go away for a short time to get some rest and refresh her thoughts without losing touch with her home and family. The next day, Evan looked closely at Lissa, noting that she looked especially good today, as if she was glowing from within. His gaze was full of surprise and slight tenderness. He could not help but notice how the changes in her made her even more attractive and mysterious. Just yesterday, she received permission to leave from the strict Duke, which seemed almost impossible and caused suspicion and bewilderment among everyone. Despite the doubts, all that was left was to return home and explain everything in detail in order to dispel fears and restore peace to those around him. In fact, something pleasant happened that raised my spirits a little and awakened a slight hope for a bright future, making me believe that everything could change for the better in the near future. She began to wonder if Evan had visited the library today because it was important for her to understand what he was doing and what thoughts had been troubling him lately. Evan explained that he hadn't been to the library today because he was going to a meeting with the Knight Commander, part of his normal schedule that he was used to. He added that tomorrow he has a training session to help him stay in shape and be prepared for any unexpected events that may arise in life. She was surprised that the training took place at a strictly defined time and according to a special system that she had not known about before, which added to her interest in his classes. He admitted that he was into swords, and this quiet guy suddenly said that this is what he liked. Nothing else attracted him so much. It was clear that the young man was truly fascinated by swords, and she noted that for such a hobby, it was important to choose the right clothes to look appropriate. When she approached him, he was alone, and she took the initiative to help him choose clothes to create the right look and support his style. She suggested that he wear something more modest and appropriate, so as not to stand out and fit into the surrounding environment, thereby helping him feel more confident. Her advice was to go with a vest. It looked cute and casual, which she thought Evan would definitely like and would highlight his personality. She had seen the guy's diary before, and for her it was like a glimpse into the solution to a problem. She understood his character and goals better, which made communication easier. The confused expression on Evan's face betrayed his confusion and internal struggle, although he tried to control himself and not show his worries to those around him. His eyes hid the anxiety he did not want to voice. Despite his confusion, he remained sweet and attractive, like a ray of light in this tense moment. But suddenly his attention was distracted when someone called Lissa, interrupting their short meeting and ruining the tender atmosphere. Lissa approached Lissa, and it was decided that she would go with her to support her in an important matter. At the same time, she was told that after this, she would definitely have to return to meet the others, which added significance to the situation. Before parting, Evan wished Lissa to take care of herself and be careful with the world around her. His words sounded like a quiet reminder that life requires attention and caution in every step. Lissa was absolutely delighted looking at the dress, which immediately caught her eye. It seemed to her not just beautiful, but ideally suitable for a special occasion, emphasizing her inner mood and the importance of the moment. She was sure that Lissa shared her opinion and also considered this dress worthy of admiration. In her eyes, this outfit was a symbol of beauty and grace, causing a feeling of pride for her choice. Lissa noticed that everything around was simply delightful, and such a dress only enhanced the impression, creating an atmosphere of celebration and ease. Her view of the situation was full of admiration and approval, which further raised Larissa's mood. Lissa went with her, acting as her assistant and escort, and 2 guard knights provided security. Lissa thought for a long time whether she should buy that dress. She thought over all the details, the style, the color, and how suitable it would be for the upcoming event. After some time, she decided to cancel the purchase and said that she would not take the dress. The reasons remained unclear to those around her. Lissa had been walking around different shops for 2 hours choosing things. Meanwhile, the servants were tired and began to get bored because the walk lasted much longer than planned. Despite being tired, Lissa said that she would like to go to one more place to see something interesting there and perhaps find something special. She named a very famous confectionery shop in the city that she would like to go to. For Lissa, this place was something special and attracted her attention. Hearing this, everyone was a little taken aback. Such an unexpected decision seemed strange to them because they were already tired and thinking about returning home. Evan loved sweets, and Lissa knew about it, so she really wanted to buy something tasty for him to please her husband and make this day special. There were a lot of people in the candy store, so they had to wait in line for almost an hour. This was a bit frustrating for everyone considering how tired they were. One of the servants suggested saying that Lissa was from the E-card family in order to get service faster and avoid a long wait in line. If they had taken advantage of this, they could have been given what they wanted without having to stand for so long, which would have been much more convenient for everyone. Lissa, however, was against such deception. She said that if they did not stand in line, people might start insulting them, and she did not want to ruin the Duke's reputation over trifles. In the end, they decided to stand in line after all, since each person was only entitled to one dessert, and everyone had to get their portion fairly, and in turn, Lissa started talking about some tasty treats again, describing them with interest and anticipation. However, soon she began to have difficulty breathing. She began to cough, which immediately alerted everyone nearby. This caused a little alarm and concern among those present who were closely monitoring her condition. One of the maids immediately offered to go with Lissa to support her mistress. She wanted to be there in case help or attention was needed, showing care and responsibility. This behavior of the maid showed how attentive and devoted she was to her job. Someone from the surrounding asked how the lady was feeling. Lissa tried to calm everyone down, assuring that she was fine and there was no need to worry. She did not want to create unnecessary drama and tried to keep the situation under control so that those around her would not worry unnecessarily. Lissa said that she was going to the toilet and the maid immediately asked to go with her. She explained this by her desire to be there and help if something suddenly went wrong. Such a gesture of attention inspired trust and made her feel that Lissa was not alone. Despite the failure with the treats, she insisted that even if they couldn't get many sweets, they had to have at least 3 ganaches. This was important for having a real tea party, and they had to keep this minimum so as not to upset their plans. It was clear that if Evan noticed that there were too few sweets, he would definitely refuse them. His attitude towards these treats was quite critical, and the lack of the required amount could make him unwilling to try what was offered. He always stated that he did not like such sweets at all, and would not eat them unless he felt confident in the quality or quantity. This could jeopardize the whole idea of the tea party, disrupting the planned order and atmosphere of the event. It was important for her to buy 3 ganaches so that the 3 of them could have a quiet tea party without quarrels and grudges. This event was supposed to become a moment of unity where everyone could feel comfortable and joyful. If one of them fails to take a sweet or a cake, there is a risk that the tea party will be ruined. Such a trifle could ruin the whole day, and because of this, everyone's mood will immediately drop and tension and disagreements will appear. She asked Lissa if she wanted to go with them, but before she could finish speaking, Lissa immediately noticed that there was some tension in the conversation and that they were trying to hide something important. Larissa explained that if this tea party fails, the family that had hoped to strengthen their relationship during the walk could, on the contrary, drift apart and lose trust in each other. After all, human connections are very subtle and fragile, and even minor conflicts or misunderstandings can lead to serious problems and a breakdown in relationships between loved ones. Over time, such petty quarrels will cause people to distance themselves from each other, and eventually the lineage that was supposed to survive will cease to exist, and the memory of it will disappear along with it. All the plushies hearing these words were surprised and did not understand why the lady was so worried about buying a cake and why she attached so much importance to it. She explained that if she failed to buy the main cake, exactly what she had said would happen, so she needed to go to the restroom for a moment to resolve this important issue. No one accompanied her. Everyone was lost in thought and confusion, not understanding what was best to do, but they hoped that she would return soon and everything would go according to plan as intended. The lady said that after returning from the restroom, she would wait for them at the entrance so that they could immediately continue the plan and not waste time because every moment was worth its weight in gold. They asked the lady to be very careful and cautious in her actions. She was warned not to make mistakes and to follow all the rules so as not to create unnecessary problems. For her, this task seemed very simple, and she did not see any difficulties in it. Everything looked so obvious that she was confident of a successful outcome. The store had to be somewhere nearby in this area, although the exact location was difficult to pinpoint. She knew she had to take a good look around. It was a dark, unmarked cafe with no signage and was easy to miss. The only landmark was a strange statue of a horse that looked absolutely disgusting. As soon as she entered, the man sitting there immediately noticed and began asking who had entered the establishment. His attention was directed specifically at her. She replied that she was looking for Sven Bastian, and this name obviously interested the man. He listened with curiosity, trying to understand why she needed this man. The man was very surprised by her visit, but he could not understand who exactly she was and what role she played in this story. She remained a mystery to him. The girl asked to tell the man that she was the same girl from the photo that he had probably seen before. This should have clarified the situation. She insisted on meeting him immediately to explain everything in person and as quickly as possible without delays and unnecessary conversations. The man in turn turned to Mr. Evan, who was nearby and familiar with the situation. His opinion and reaction were important. Mr. Evan expressed his pleasure at the meeting and showed his respect by being open and friendly towards his guest. His name was Ludi Dicardo, and he was the commander of the knights serving the Accard family, a family of high status and influence. Evan was also pleased to meet Liudiam, showing genuine interest and respect for this man who clearly meant a lot. People noted that he had heard of Evan's achievements and knew that he had won first place in a junior fencing tournament, which added to his respect. The boy said that it happened last year, and the commander noted that this was quite expected from the heirs of the Accard family, because they always have to face difficulties. However, he still has many trials and challenges ahead of him that will require great effort and endurance to prove his worth and live up to his family's expectations. For the heir of the ducal family, such trials were a common thing, but the commander of the knights did not allow himself to speak so rudely without reason, trying to maintain discipline. He decided that he needed to put the young man in his place so that he would understand the seriousness of his situation and the responsibility that lay on his shoulders in the future. The guy tried to object, but the commander sharply reminded him that the Duchess died precisely because of his actions, and it was a tragedy that must not be forgotten. It seemed that the young man had long forgotten those events, but the commander deliberately reminded him of them. He wanted the guy to realize what serious consequences his actions and deeds could cause in the present. The young man was taken by surprise by this pressure and began to talk about his past. Trying to explain why everything had happened the way it had, he described how much the house he had grown up in had changed and why that was important. The guy said that before he came into the family, the Duke's mansion was a bright and warm place. Joy and hope reigned there. People who believed in the best and supported each other in everything lived in the house. After Evan's birth, the Duchess, the boy's mother, died of poor health. From that moment on, Sadness and heavy melancholy reigned in the house, which for a long time overshadowed the bright days and greatly affected the Duke and the whole family. He believed that if Matilda had survived, many things might have turned out differently. In that case, the family would have avoided much of the suffering and loneliness that now seemed insurmountable and weighed on all those close to them. The commander harshly accused the young man, saying that all the family's troubles were his fault. These words were a heavy blow that the boy could not easily accept because they touched on his very essence and past mistakes. The young man was taken aback by such a sharp accusation from the commander. He did not even expect to hear such harsh and categorical words from him filled with condemnation and misunderstanding. Despite this, the commander did not stop continuing to claim that Evan did not deserve happiness at all. In his opinion, he was the culprit of all the tragedies that destroyed the life and peace of the family. Evan was the only person who made the Duke feel a deep loneliness and bitterness. These feelings now haunted the Duke every day, not giving him peace and not allowing him to forget what had happened. However, when Lissa brought him new clothes, it immediately changed his state a little. It seemed that a small ray of hope appeared in his soul, and a feeling that someone nearby was ready to support him. My father always chose his clothes himself, not trusting anyone with this seemingly simple but important ritual for him. This showed his strong desire for independence and control over himself. At the same time, the father always ate breakfast alone, which only increased the feeling of his inner isolation. This habitual solitary breakfast became a symbol of his alienation and loneliness in the house. He started the morning with breakfast with Lissa. It had become a habit for them to share a simple moment before a busy day. The atmosphere was calm and cozy, which helped to prepare for the upcoming tasks. Fencing turned out to be the best way for him to distract himself. This sport not only developed the body, but also gave him the opportunity to concentrate, to forget about the worries and experiences that did not give him peace. They agreed that they would definitely return here the next day after breakfast. There they had a long training session that lasted until the evening, demanding full dedication and patience from both of them. The guy noted that he finally understood the importance of the commander's words. It became clear to him that he was demanding from him not just efforts but persistence and fortitude that would help him cope with difficulties. The commander responded by emphasizing that the boy would have to put forth maximum effort. Only hard work would lead him to true mastery and make him worthy of honor and respect. It was explained to him that only in this way could he become the true pride of the Duke. It was not an easy task, but the only way to prove his loyalty and strength. All that was required of him was to go through all the trials and not give up despite the fatigue and difficulties. Only in this way could he change his situation and justify the hopes. His main desire was to atone for the guilt he felt for his mother's death. This feeling was the driving force giving him no peace and forcing him to strive for perfection. He was constantly told that his whole life must pass in the shadow of the Duke. He was obliged to accept his role to move forward, not counting on easy victories but at the same time to prove his significance with all his might. It was believed that he was supposed to be as lonely and unhappy as the Duke. Their shared pain and loneliness linked their destinies, making them similar and difficult, like two reflections in one mirror. The room where they trained was impressive in its huge size and almost complete emptiness. Such an atmosphere made it easier to concentrate and not be distracted by extraneous things, which was very important for their tasks. The man said that he was waiting for her upstairs. Hearing this, the girl immediately went up the stairs, feeling that she would soon meet someone very important and significant for further events. Soon this man appeared. He seemed to have absorbed all the atmosphere of mystery and power that was hovering around, and his appearance immediately set the tone for everything that was happening. It was Bastian, the head of a dark guild known for possessing any information he needed and being able to influence the fates of many people, controlling events from the shadows. Sven Bastian smiled, admitting that he hadn't expected to see her here. His smile was mysterious and contained many secrets that he preferred not to reveal. Rumor had it that she knew his real name and he knew hers in return. This created a special secret between them, understood only by the two of them, and made their connection unique. Out of politeness, he made a sign that he was ready to introduce himself. Despite all the tension and mystery of the moment, he showed respect by observing the necessary formalities and rituals of the meeting. After that, the cat suddenly jumped from his hand straight to Lissa, as if choosing her as its new owner. This action surprised everyone present, especially Lissa. She could not have foreseen such a turn of events. The man seemed to be stunned too, because the cat showed unusual affection for Lissa. His surprise only grew when he noticed how the cat was drawn specifically to Lissa, as if choosing someone he could fully trust. The animal seemed to sense something special in her showing unusual affection. Lissa explained that she had practically no time, so she intended to tell everything briefly right away. She asked the man to take the cat with him, emphasizing that this was important and not subject to discussion. She immediately outlined the financial conditions. The man had to transfer 10 gold coins to her. He could spend the rest of the money at his own discretion without unnecessary questions or checks. But the main condition of the deal was her 3 demands, which had to be met without fail. Without their fulfillment, the agreement simply would not take place, and she did not intend to compromise. The man replied that he was ready to listen carefully to all her conditions so as not to miss anything and to organize everything correctly. Understanding how important it was for her and how serious she was. The first of the conditions Lissa named was the purchase of a title which could significantly increase her status and improve her social position in society, opening up new opportunities and respect. The second important condition was to find a space that would fully satisfy all her needs and would meet her high requirements for comfort and functionality. He asked what exactly she meant by the territory where everything should be located, because for proper planning, it is necessary to clearly imagine the scale and possibilities of the space. They explained that the main character had already received his part, and now she intended to continue his work moving in the same direction that he chose in his story. Lissa insisted that all these actions take place as quietly and unnoticed as possible, so that the Duke could not find out about their plans and interfere with them. The man thought about it because Lissa was only 14 and it was still too early for her to officially register her title, which created certain difficulties. She then suggested creating a new identity with fictitious data to circumvent legal restrictions and avoid unnecessary suspicion from others. Lissa said that she wants to buy a mansion in the Chania area, but she does not have enough money for all the land, so she plans to buy only half of the plot. The Chania area is considered relatively inexpensive due to its distance from the capital and the lack of obvious advantages, so almost everything there is already sold out. There are huge iron ore deposits in Hanyo, and with each new discovery the price of land increases several times, attracting more and more interest and investment. Seymour was only able to obtain half of the required amount as the funds were not enough to purchase the entire thing, which significantly limited his options. Due to lack of money, she will not be able to buy the entire territory she was claiming, and will have to settle for a smaller plot of land. She will also not be able to acquire a decent title. The highest title available to her will only be baronial, which is significantly lower than the expected status. She really wanted to ask him for forgiveness for all her actions, but the circumstances were such that she was forced to act this way. Doubts raged inside her, but there was no way out. If he really was the main character of this story, then he had to go through a serious test. This was necessary to show his strength of spirit and firmness in the decisions he had to make. After that, he turned to the lady, showing respect and willingness to listen attentively to all her subsequent demands and requests. He understood that much depended on his answer. She was so immersed in the role of the villain that she stopped noticing everything that was happening around her. All her energy was directed towards giving herself completely to her performance and convincingly playing what she had planned. At one point, she announced that it was time to voice the final conditions. He, with genuine interest, asked what exactly she was going to ask for in the finale, expecting something important. She stated that she had come here precisely for this purpose. This emphasized the importance of her intentions and her determination to achieve what she wanted at any cost without retreating in the face of difficulties. He was amazed by her words because she claimed that her request was much more important than the 2 initial goals that were discussed earlier. The lady noted that in the third conditions, there is a very important point that she especially wants to emphasize. Duke Eckerd is soon going to find a doctor who will take on a very important case. He needs not just a doctor, but a person who can be completely trusted and who will follow all instructions without question. It is important for her that this doctor be one of their own, a person who will not betray and will work exclusively for their interests. Without this, it will be impossible to ensure control over the situation. Of course, they could invite any outstanding specialist, but the Duke wants the doctor to belong to Mr. Tachka's guild. Only there can they find the right person with the right connections. A similar trick was already in the original. The Duke often invited different doctors to her to monitor her condition. This allowed her health to be closely monitored and not to miss a single moment. She needs to think through a very important detail, that the doctor be bribed in advance. Only then will it be possible to accurately calculate the moment when she will need to die, so that everything goes according to their plan. If the doctor really takes her side, the Duke thinks that with his help it will be easier to carry out future intrigues and skirmishes associated with this situation. He promised that if he could find a suitable person, he would try to find a woman for this role. Lissa was not sure whether she had the right to choose, but in the end she trusted his decision. She explained that Siren was a fake name that her doctor would work under. As soon as someone heard the name, they would immediately know who she was talking about, and this would help keep the secret. There is very little time left. The crow has only conveyed the most important, but now they are in the thick of this dangerous situation, and delay is unacceptable. The Bastion Guild in the novel is famous for its extraordinary secrecy and ability to keep secrets. No one can just get information from them, especially concerning important matters. They carefully guard their clients. Even if the Duke tries to find out something about Seymour or find out information about the princess, the Guild will do everything possible to keep secrets. They will not allow leaks because it is important for them not to betray trust and remain impenetrable. He wasn't listening to what the woman was saying at all, but simply stared at the cat in silence, showing no interest in the words. His gaze remained focused on the animal as if detached from what was happening around him. His gaze remained on the cat for as long as he deemed necessary. No word, no reaction, just motionless, quiet contemplation, as if the cat was the only meaning in that moment. The woman was very grateful to him for the profitable deal. For her it was a great outcome, and she understood that now he had no choice but to accept her terms and continue working further. He made out the check as she had requested, then handed it to her. This was the formal confirmation of their agreement, and thus he had completed his actions as agreed. She noted that she had asked to leave her only 10 zlotys, since the rest of the money was to remain with him. Her expectations were simple and clear. She wanted only the minimum amount. However, he handed her a check for 100 zlotys, considerably more than she had expected. This unexpected decision made her wonder about the motives and significance of this sum in their agreement. He reminded her that he remembered her request, but added that the remaining amount was payment for their future deal. In this way, he indicated that he was counting on the continuation and development of their cooperation. The woman was taken aback by this move and asked again to make sure she had understood correctly. Her surprise was due to the unexpectedness and new meaning of the deal. She also asked what exactly he wanted from her, what he expected in return for his actions. This question meant the beginning of a deeper dialogue and clarification of intentions. Then she asked a counter-question. What does the person running the guild who is asking for information want? Her interest was aimed at understanding the true goals and motives of the interlocutor. He asked what information he could obtain, although the girl noted that she knew nothing about the Duke. Her answer emphasized the limitations of her knowledge and her reluctance to give away too much. She also pointed out that the Duke would not tell anything, so there was no point in her revealing secrets without confirmation and facts. But he said he wanted completely different information not related to the Duke. This introduced new intrigue and changed the direction of the conversation. His interest was focused on Lissa, and it was about her that he wanted to know more. This unexpected statement caused great surprise in the girl. She was shocked to realize that he was looking for information specifically about Lissa, and this put her in a difficult position, forcing her to think about why they needed this information. She could tell him only a small part of what she knew about herself, but to continue collaborating with them, she would have to tell him the whole truth, even the one she usually hid. She didn't think he was unaware of these events, but she decided to start the conversation with him with this very thing. To prepare the ground for further exchange of information, she didn't really have a choice, so she simply agreed to continue the dialogue, realizing that otherwise nothing would work out, and she would have to reveal more than she wanted. She decided to test his intentions and reaction to understand how serious he was and whether he could be trusted with all the information he was going to tell. In return, she said that she was willing to agree to certain conditions that were important to her and could help her get what she needed. The price of information was mutual. She demanded equal value for any information he could provide about someone or something that was valuable to her. He smiled and sighed as if agreeing with this proposal, realizing that now a serious exchange of data between them was beginning. She stated that she was in principle ready to cooperate and was waiting for questions that would help her understand what exactly he was interested in and what he wanted to know. He asked her what she herself would like to know, and at that moment she realized that his interest in her went beyond a simple formality, which was not the case in the original. He specified that he wanted to know more about her family, especially about Pochesh and her mother, which was unexpected and touching for her. Duke Eckerd told only part of his story, and she remained in the dark about the rest that was being built around it. The man assumed that she meant Matilda Eckerd, the Duke's wife, about whom there were many rumors and stories. As in many cases, the Duke was given arranged marriages, but thanks to his kind heart, the relationship with his wife developed surprisingly well and harmoniously. Matilda was a very charming woman, with a gentle and kind character, which is why she was loved by almost everyone who knew her. She especially liked the Duke's sense of humor. It was because of this that she always laughed and felt happy when she was around him, and this was visible to those around her. At that moment, she was very surprised to hear this news. This information seemed unusual and unexpected to her. She could not immediately believe what she heard. I remembered him once saying that a good joke doesn't require many words, but rather just having a little fun, walking lightly and with a smile. What surprised her was that she enjoyed these jokes more than she expected. This was real love, deep and sincere, which surpassed the feelings between Alani and Seymour. From then on, the Duke spent almost all his time with his wife. He almost stopped interfering in political affairs, which was completely uncharacteristic for him and caused surprise among those around him. His usual business rhythm was replaced by family peace. It was unusual for the Duke to relax and withdraw from business for the sake of his family, but that was exactly what he was allowing himself to do now. It seemed like an exception to the rule, because usually he was always in control of everything that was happening around him. There was a slight sadness inside the Duke to see a man with great power gradually moving away from his duties for the sake of personal happiness. It was strange and almost sad because politics had always been the meaning of life for him. Everyone knew how much he loved his wife. When she was around, his calm increased several times. It was her presence that made his life easier, brighter, and gave him the strength to cope with difficulties. Matilda had to remain in the public eye at all times so that no one would doubt her loyalty to the Duke. He strictly forbade her to meet other men, making sure that no one could shake the trust between them. She began to wonder what exactly the Duke meant by other men. She wondered about the limits of these prohibitions and how strictly she had to follow them, trying to understand the extent of freedom she was still allowed. A man nearby noticed that she had recently accidentally gone into town in the company of the Knight Commander, which raised even more questions. He remembered hearing a conversation a few days ago that now came back to him with renewed vigor, as if pushing him to realize the importance of what was happening. The event would not leave his mind and would not leave him alone. If earlier it was about some lyceum, now everything concerned the detachment commander's area. This added significance to the meeting and created the feeling that the consequences would be much more serious and large-scale than it seemed at first. The commander's name was Ludva, and he could always be recognized by his blue uniform. It made him stand out from the crowd and make him noticeable in any situation, as if emphasizing his status and special position among others. The question arose as to why he always wore a blue uniform. It looked like a mark of distinction, part of his charisma, which emphasized his uniqueness and made people pay attention to him. Today, the knight's uniforms were darker than usual, and no one except Ludva wore them. This made him especially noticeable and different from the others, as if he stood alone, playing on the contrast with the overall picture. There were whispers around about his unusual taste in clothes, which seemed strange and even unusual. This caused slight bewilderment and questions, but no one dared to discuss this topic openly. Some claimed that the reason for his choice was due to Matilda's eyes, which were always bright blue. It was said that this could influence his views and actions, although no one could provide direct evidence. In the end, no one could explain exactly why Ludva behaved this way. All assumptions remained at the level of rumors and guesses, and there was no confirmation to understand the real reason for his actions. Yesterday, she decided to ask a question related to his name, trying to understand if there was some hidden meaning or connection to what was happening around him. He responded evasively, noting that many people valued his phone, and therefore his behavior could be explained by such attention and interest from other people. The girl's health had always been poor, and it worsened noticeably when she became pregnant with Evan, which added worries and concerns to everyone around her. The Duke was constantly worried about her during this difficult period, paying special attention to her pregnancy, but unfortunately she died during childbirth, which was a heavy blow. It will be very difficult for Evan to learn about this because the loss left a deep wound in his soul and changed his life forever. She believes that he has long since realized the full gravity of what is happening and has internally dealt with the bitterness, although this is difficult to imagine. In addition, the gentleman warned that the lady should be careful because Sir Evan is very similar to the Duke, as if he were his exact copy, which could cause certain consequences. Indeed, they were as alike as two peas in a pod, and this similarity surprised many, making them think about the connection between them. At that moment, the man decided that her curiosity was satisfied and she had received enough information to understand the situation. She admitted that overall, everything was more or less clear, and then he decided that he could ask her one important question that he had long wanted to discuss. She replied that she was ready to listen, and he became interested in her opinion of the Duke, hoping to learn her views and feelings. At that moment, she was at a loss and could not immediately give an answer, feeling a slight excitement and indecision. She could pretend that she didn't understand anything, but Sven, being the head of the guild, knew much more than it seemed at first glance. She understood that she absolutely had to win him over to her side, no matter the difficulties and obstacles. At the same time, she had to respond very carefully and tactfully so as not to arouse suspicion and achieve the desired result. The idea that this man could very well exert influence on the imperial family and even have the ability to control its decisions and actions in the future was spinning around in her mind. This gave her confidence that her efforts would not be in vain. She understood that his support could be key in the current circumstances because control over the imperial family is a huge power and responsibility that he might be ready to accept. He was genuinely surprised when he heard her words. Such an unexpected confession aroused his genuine interest, and even some caution because she spoke very openly and confidently. It seemed that her answer was exactly what he expected to hear, and she managed to choose her words in such a way that it impressed him and secured her position in the conversation. At this time, she had already approached the maid and two knights who were standing nearby to check whether they had managed to buy everything they needed and complete the task. The maid, smiling, said that they had bought almost everything that was needed, and this caused her sincere admiration and gratitude for their efforts and help. She was truly delighted and did not forget to give the maid flowers as a token of her appreciation for her participation and support in this matter, which made her even more sympathetic. The maid was surprised by such attention because the girl herself noticed that they were all standing in line and simply decided to make this small, pleasant gesture in response to their patience. The girl was puzzled by how closely they were looking at her, thinking that perhaps their displeasure was related to her answers, although this turned out not to be the case. The maid assured her that she was not at all dissatisfied, and on the contrary was very grateful for the attentive attitude and care, which further strengthened the trust between them. They were curious about what exactly she was holding in her hands, trying to understand the meaning of this object and why it was so important. Everyone's eyes turned to her, waiting for an explanation, but there was no answer. The lady replied that it was a secret that could not be disclosed. She hid the true content, not wanting to reveal to anyone a secret that could change many things. The gentleman was in his room, immersed in papers and documents. His gaze was focused on the sheets. He was trying to understand the complex issues related to current affairs. First, he fully understood that Lissa had become his daughter-in-law, and now this changed the situation. It was an important step that imposed new obligations and changed his attitude towards her. For a time, he even managed to hide his suspicions about Duke Orlando. He tried not to enter into conflict with him prematurely in order to avoid unnecessary attention. It was too early to meet the Duke, too many unknowns and risks. For now, it was worth keeping a distance so as not to provoke dangerous events. Everyone was ready to step over heads to achieve the goal, and he understood that he couldn't relax. The situation was tense, and only tough measures could retain power. There was no other way to keep the imperial palace under control. Only force and influence could maintain order and obedience among the nobility. The only way to maintain power over the imperial family is to gain complete control. Without this, attempts at governance are doomed to failure and chaos. It was the control over Princess Alani that was the key to power. By controlling her, it was possible to direct events and influence the decisions of the entire imperial family. The only way out is to build up strength and influence while Lissa remains Evan's wife. This time must be used as effectively as possible to strengthen your position. After the enemy was destroyed, Ella was to become not the second, but the only wife of Evan. This decision seemed logical and inevitable, given the circumstances and the state of affairs in the family. Ella was ready to accept the new role despite all the difficulties of the situation. But Lissa had very little time left. The disease was progressing, and every day was becoming a test for her. She understood that her strength was waning, and thoughts about the future were becoming increasingly gloomy and disturbing. Lissa, who was next to Lissa, reported on her condition. She regularly coughed up blood, which was a clear sign of deterioration. This information worried everyone who knew about the disease, but especially Larissa's loved ones. Evan himself did not see it directly as he tried to hide the symptoms. He was in a certain ignorance which allowed him to maintain hope, although he felt the impending disaster inside. Lissa tried to hide her illness in every possible way. She did not want to burden anyone close to her, and was afraid that she would become a heavy burden for them. Her will was strong, despite the weakness of her body. She was a very pure soul and a smart child. Her innocence and intelligence could not help but attract the attention and respect of others. Even in difficult situations, she maintained clarity of mind. She was able to understand Evan's subtle sense of humor. It showed her attentiveness and depth of perception, which was rare for her age and position. Lissa asked him not to joke too often at home. Her request was prompted by the desire to maintain at least a little peace and seriousness in their home, where the disease cast a shadow over everything around. Evan thought it was the first time he had made a joke since Matilda's death. It had been a long period of joyless silence, and humor seemed almost alien to him now, but he tried to stay in touch with life. Initially, he took Ella simply to become Evan's wife. It was a calculation that seemed right at the time, but fate made its own adjustments. Ella won a considerable amount of money thanks to a successful bet. This circumstance changed the attitude towards her, making her a more visible and valuable figure in the eyes of others. She had to be handled with care given her success and influence. She was no longer just a wife, but a force to be reckoned with, and one who could change the balance of power. Evan said that Lissa came to him. This visit was of great importance as it concerned important events and plans related to family and the future. She was delighted to see her father and immediately asked if he was busy at the moment. It was a pleasant surprise for her, as they had rarely seen each other lately. Her father replied that he had some free time, and she immediately invited him to join her for a cup of tea. Such a time spent together seemed to her a good opportunity to talk. He agreed, and she quickly brought a delicious cake that she had recently baked herself. The cake was tender and aromatic, which pleasantly surprised her father and created a cozy atmosphere. Later, they bought some very tasty ganaches, and Lissa and her accompanying knights stood in line for a long time to get some of the goodies too. It took some time, but it was worth it. She had dreamed of the three of them having a meal together, but Evan had declined, explaining that he had a training session. This had upset her a little, but she understood that sports were important to him. She thought that Evan would probably come right away if he could because he loves her very much and rarely misses such moments. However, circumstances did not allow him to be there. After tasting the treats, she noted that everything was very tasty and fresh. She was glad that her father and the other guests enjoyed this feast of tastes with her. He asked with interest whether she had left especially for this visit and treats. Such a question showed that her father appreciated and noticed her efforts and care. She admitted that the main goal was a family tea party, and she also wanted to give her father a book that she had been eyeing for him for a long time. It was supposed to be a special gift. The book told of a happy event where a family won money through luck. She planned to use the money to buy gifts for all relatives and friends. Evan really liked the book, and looking at his workspace, she guessed that books were interesting and inspiring to him there too. The gentleman was a little embarrassed when he saw the gift, and she noticed that it was the latest edition of the book. She had managed to buy the latest copy thanks to her luck, which added significance to the gift. He asked if the book had a son, as if trying to figure out if the characters had a sequel or an heir. The question came out of nowhere like a play on words, but he was serious in his interest. She thought he was joking again because he liked to say something funny in any situation. His manner of speaking made her smile, and she had no doubt that this was another of his light humor, which she already knew well. Suddenly she began to cough violently, and this interrupted their conversation. The cough was sharp and strong, as if she was ill, and her attention turned to her well-being, interrupting the light conversation. This caused the gentleman to become frightened, taking the cough as a sign of a serious problem, while the girl, feeling anxious, quickly apologized, trying to calm the situation and show that everything was fine. He looked at the book again, then looked up as if trying to understand something important that was hidden in its pages or to find answers to his questions in it. He asked for Lissa to be called because he wanted to know more, and Lissa was the person who could tell him details or help clarify the situation. Lissa reported that the lady had walked around the entire city examining different places and studying options, which spoke of her persistence and serious intention in the search. She looked at many things, including dresses and jewelry, but never found what she wanted to buy, which showed her high standards and inability to make a quick decision. He was very surprised by such persistence because he did not expect that the lady would spend so much time carefully examining everything before settling on something. For their family tea party, she bought a limited edition ganache, saying that Mr. Evan loved sweets, which spoke of attention to detail and concern for the family's taste preferences. While they were standing in line, people dispersed and they were left with a box that had the bookstore symbol on it, and that was the end of it, creating a feeling of slight uncertainty. The master said that the maid could leave, deciding that her help was not needed now, and they could be left alone with what was happening to figure it out themselves. She asked the gentleman if Leona had spoken to the doctor, trying to understand whether there had been any progress in important matters or whether something should be done. She noted that it was probably time to start searching because the situation required quick and decisive action, and there was little time left to wait. He said that she should act in the way that only she knows how, guided by her knowledge and feelings, without deviating from what seems right and familiar to her. Lissa understood this and took note, and he also asked her to do him a favor, to carry out a certain assignment that was very important to him and could not be delayed. She had to buy everything that had to do with Larissa, any things, objects, and little things connected with her, so that not a single little thing would be left without attention and would be purchased in advance. He couldn't believe that she was given so little money because she spent the whole day just looking at the goods, but buying practically nothing, and this seemed extremely strange and incomprehensible to him. He persistently asked the maid to buy more things that resembled those that Larissa had touched or shown interest in, so that she would have everything she needed in the city. It was important to him that during her stay in the city, she had enough things that were as similar as possible to those to which she was accustomed and which brought her pleasure. After some time, the gentleman carefully examined the drawing that Larissa had made with her own hands, trying to understand her thoughts and feelings put into every line and color. He looked thoughtfully at this drawing, trying to grasp the hidden meaning and understand what exactly she wanted to convey with this image. In fact, Lissa was very tired and exhausted after everything that had happened during the day. Her strength was at its limit. The trip took up almost the entire morning and day, leaving no time for rest or respite, which affected her condition. She even had to secretly take some ecclesia fruits with her to snack on the road, and now she was especially pleased to just lie around and rest. Evan came to see her, and she was surprised that he had only just arrived because it was already late, and she did not expect to see him so late. He was a blogger, and this made her wonder why he was late and why he didn't tell her in advance, because she was waiting for him impatiently. Lissa replied that of course she was waiting for him and admitted that she could not fall asleep without his presence nearby, so important were his support and attention to her. It was a truth that could not be disputed. The nights were probably gone after all they had been training hard all day. Their strength and time were completely occupied with this, so it was difficult to meet anyone. The guy admitted that this was exactly how it was, and Lissa noticed that he looked very dirty after such training. It was obvious that he did not spare himself and spent a lot of energy on training, which revealed his fatigue and condition. He added that now she didn't have to wait for him as long as before. He realized that after such a day, he simply wouldn't have time for long meetings and delays, so it was better not to create unnecessary expectations for himself. He noted that sometimes he might come too late, and then they wouldn't even be able to have breakfast together. Evening and morning plans would now be greatly reduced, and their time together would be reduced even more. Lissa was surprised that he was going to leave as soon as he woke up, and the guy confirmed this without any doubt. Such a daily routine clearly left no room for lazy mornings and long gatherings. He probably dreamed of taking over the world with a ball. The training was so intense and regular that it seemed as if all his time was already scheduled down to the minute, and this shaped his character and goals. She said she understood his position and accepted it. Despite her sadness, she was ready to accept the new regime, realizing that everything would be different now and she would need to get used to it. This meant they wouldn't be able to see each other much anymore, although she still hoped for a calmer, more measured life with him. This realization made her feel some loss and regret. After some time, the guy had already changed into his sleepwear and was getting ready to rest after a hard day, completely immersing himself in the desire to regain his strength. However, he noticed something on the table and asked what it was that had caught his attention. His curiosity immediately turned to the little surprise she had prepared for him. Lissa replied that it was ganache, a chocolate delicacy that she had bought in the city, especially for him, knowing that he loved sweets. She assured him that it was very tasty and wanted to please him. Now he understood why she had asked Lissa to make tea just for him. Apparently, he had recently trained and was very tired, so she wanted him to try this drink. It was very tasty and warming. She noticed that he looked exhausted after his workout, so she insisted that he try the tea that was prepared especially for him. It was a special tea that helped him regain his strength after a hard day. She had already tried this tea with her father and was sure that it was really good and could help him relax and gain strength after training. Although he behaved a little strangely before drinking the tea after tasting it, he quietly chuckled and left as if the tea had really pleased him and warmed his soul. He loved this tea very much, and she stood in line for an hour to buy it, because it was important to her to give him something special and pleasant. His body was weak, and she herself was terribly tired just walking through the city streets, feeling her legs giving way from fatigue. She should have told him that there was already a gift on the table, but she didn't have time. Fatigue took its toll, and time passed. The guy noticed that there was something on the table and looked at her, but she was already fast asleep, unable to react to anything. He decided to figure out for himself what exactly was on the table and saw a note which he carefully took out and began to read. In the note, she asked how his training had gone and said that she had made a lot of money, so she decided to go out into the city and buy something for her family. Since she knows that he loves books, she went to a bookstore and chose a book especially for him, light and pleasant, so as not to complicate his understanding. She thought the cover of this book was very charming, and she would definitely forgive him for buying it before bed, knowing that he would definitely like it. There was also a signature at the bottom that it was from her. This small touch gave the message special significance, as if she wanted to personally confirm her participation in this matter. After some time, she woke up feeling slightly uneasy. The dream was interrupted by the feeling that something was wrong, and it did not give her peace. Slowly coming to her senses, she realized that she was frozen, as if fear or tension had penetrated her thoughts and body, at the same time not allowing her to relax. She wondered what time it was and noticed that Evan was not sleeping next to her as usual, but was lying motionless, lost in his thoughts. He read her card quietly, as if studying each word with special attention, trying to understand the hidden meaning that she might have put into the message. Something seemed to be happening to Evan. His mood and behavior were different from usual, as if some internal conflict was brewing inside him. The only thing that had changed from yesterday was that Evan had started working out, which could explain his fatigue or tension. Perhaps something important had happened during today's training that had affected his condition. Although she didn't know for sure, she only guessed. He had been behaving very strangely yesterday, which had not escaped her attention, and now she had begun to connect his behavior with the events of the last day. She was sure that something had happened, and it couldn't be an accident. There was a growing feeling inside her that Evan was hiding something important from her. At that moment, a maid knocked on the door and asked if she could go out, because the Duke had sent an order that required immediate execution. The maid reported that the Duke had ordered that all the gold that the lady had touched yesterday be bought as if it were connected with some secret or special ritual. To order clothes, you first need to take Larissa's measurements. This is a mandatory step without which it is impossible to select items by size and style so that the clothes fit perfectly and emphasize her advantages. Larissa didn't even pay attention to the package with gifts. She didn't understand why her father sent her these things and what he wanted to express with them, because there were many misunderstandings and distances between them. He explained that going shopping without buying something could have a negative impact on his reputation. It was important to him that everything looked decent and spoke of status even in small things. If Larissa had known this before, she would have chosen the most expensive things from the best stores. She understood that such gifts are a sign of special attention and a desire to distinguish her from others. Of course, she was being watched, and it couldn't be otherwise. The Duke wouldn't let her go unattended to maintain his reputation and control the situation. If it weren't for surveillance, the Duke wouldn't know what routes she took, and that could create problems or unexpected situations. Larissa noticed this care and gratitude. She felt the kindness in such attention, and for the first time she smiled sincerely, despite all the difficulties. These were the first gifts of this kind in her life, so she was deeply touched. No one had ever given her anything like this before, and now she felt special. She promised that when the rest of the things were brought, she would be sure to thank the Duke for the most beautiful outfit. It was important to her to express her gratitude. Larissa wanted to thank those who gave her the opportunity to be here for every moment spent in this new and unusual world for her. Lissa reported that the Duchess claimed that all purchases were made exclusively for the family and not for herself personally. This impressed not only the Duke himself, but also Larissa, who was watching what was happening attentively. Both the Duke and Larissa were touched. The gifts, despite their apparent simplicity, were significant to them. Larissa especially felt the warmth in this gesture, despite all the external restraint. Compared to other gifts, this gift seemed almost simple and insignificant, like a small piece of ice against the backdrop of huge storms, but this was precisely what made it special and valuable. It was worth considering how much money could influence her gifts, without an obvious reason, or a sign that something deeper is going on inside, perhaps underlying emotions or intentions. The question arises: did the Duke really believe her game? Or is there something else behind all this that makes one wonder about the true motives and sincerity of her behavior? She didn't understand why the Duke needed to control the situation with his family. If conflicts would help him achieve what he wanted, then he had some kind of clear plan thought out and complete. In her eyes, if his strategy really does involve family differences, then success seems entirely possible, and the plan may work exactly as intended. Lissa also guessed that the Duke had hired a doctor specifically to find out how serious Larissa's condition was. This was not just medical interest, but part of a big game and care. They said that the doctor was not only for diagnostics, but also to look after Larissa in the Israeli zone. If they do not find a suitable person, the Duke will personally visit her every day. Lissa was amazed by such attention. The Duke really acts relying on proven methods, leaving nothing to chance, and observing everything strictly according to plan. She looked at the gifts again and thought that perhaps the Duke had done this not out of love, but to avoid feeling obligated to anyone or because he felt pity for her condition. Lissa was very grateful for the care even in small things. She was not bothered by the gender of the doctor, but if the choice was up to her, she would prefer a woman, because with a man, the perception of the situation would be completely different. Lissa said that she would try to talk to the Duke to sort out the situation. Lissa agreed and said that she would trust Lissa to decide what to do in this difficult situation. Lissa also admitted that she does not understand why she always feels awkward around men except her father. This internal feeling of discomfort has been with her for a long time and was difficult to explain. Despite everything, the father looked like a very attractive and balanced person, which allowed the situation to be considered okay. Lissa decided to collect all the necessary information and be sure to pass it on to Lissa. Exactly 3 days passed, and Lissa again noticed that Evan was sitting at the table at night. This was happening so regularly that it could not help but alarm and raise questions about his condition. She had trouble having a normal conversation with Evan because he would leave before she woke up and return when she was already asleep. This behavior made communication almost impossible. Despite everything, Lissa decided that this evening she would definitely talk to him to understand what was going on and find out his true feelings or the reasons for this behavior. After some time, there was a knock on the door of her room and she calmly told them to come in, not suspecting that this would change the course of events in the near future. Behind the door was Serena Maristo, who from that moment on was appointed Larissa's personal physician and was supposed to visit her daily, monitor her condition, and help when necessary. Having heard the woman's name, Lissa immediately realized that she was dealing with a frontman, a cover for other purposes, and this made her even more wary. Remembering the previous conversation, she realized that the guild had worked very professionally and thoughtfully, and her daughter had been involved in a carefully thought-out game. She noticed that the boss had given her a very important task, and that her role in this matter was of special importance. Therefore, one can be sure that she will be carefully monitored and taken care of. The girl was surprised because so much money had been invested in this project, and she decided to find out if the girl really was a doctor as it seemed at first glance. The girl replied that she was not a doctor at all and knew nothing about medicine. She had only prepared herself by reading a few basic books for emergencies. Lissa was surprised and couldn't understand how she had even passed the interview. In response, she heard that the Duke didn't know much about medicine either, so the requirements weren't too strict. The girl graduated from a famous medical academy. She even had a diploma and many letters of recommendation that confirmed her supposed professionalism. However, it was clear that all these documents were fake. She had no real medical qualifications. However, the Duke rarely pays any attention to such formalities and often acts at his own discretion. It seems that Lissa made a good impression on him, and he decided to bet on her. Although Lissa herself was not completely pleased with herself, she was satisfied with how everything turned out and the answer she received. It was clear that the Duke found the situation with the Gypsum both curious and unusual, and he planned to use Lissa for his own purposes. Lissa noted that they would constantly require her to talk about her condition and monitor her every step. At the same time, the contract clearly stated that she did not have the right to disclose information about her illness to anyone. She was informed that there was no need to know all the details, but that she had to report regularly to the Duke about her condition. This was a condition that was set very strictly in order to keep the situation under control. As Lissa had expected, it was not easy for her to open up to the Duke. There was a distance between them, and trust did not arise instantly, despite the need to share important information. In addition, the siren noticed that she was asked to undergo another checkup and give an accurate report on her current health condition, which meant that her illness was taken seriously. Lissa assumed that this checkup could be the last one. The thought flashed through her mind that she would no longer have to deal with constant examinations and worries. She had to meet the Duke and tell him about her rare disease known as PE. It was a difficult conversation that would change a lot in their relationship. Because of the many symptoms, the disease would mean that she would not live more than 6 or 7 years. This knowledge weighed heavily on Lissa, making her look at the future with heaviness. No matter what medication she took, a full recovery was unlikely. All she could do was try her best, which was very difficult and required a lot of willpower. Serena knew that such statements were likely lies and not credible, and that there might be more to them than just medical facts. But Lissa admitted that she did not find the news too unexpected. She was ready to accept the truth no matter how hard it was, and to continue to fight. In addition, Lissa had to tell Serena about the Duke's reaction to this news in order to prepare herself for possible consequences and understand how to further build the relationship. Serena responded by saying that if Lissa was really healthy, then there was no point in buying the title and land under someone else's name, as it would be pointless and would only complicate the situation. Lissa noticed that the disease had not yet subsided, and although she hoped for recovery, sometimes coughing up blood reminded her of the seriousness of the condition. This caused concern, but it was clear that everything could change over time. The girl was shocked that she could not help the girl she saw. A feeling of helplessness took hold of her because she wanted to ease the suffering, but there was no way. After that, she turned to the missus with a request, but she did not understand what exactly was being discussed. The misunderstanding caught Lissa off guard, and she realized that she would have to explain everything again. Serena, in turn, asked if she could make one important request of the missus. She sounded hopeful, as if she was about to ask for something really important. The request was that it be possible to hold visits here for a certain period of time. This was very important to Serena, and she wanted permission. She noted that the servants at the estate looked great, and one of her hobbies was to arrange dates. It seemed to her a natural activity that brought pleasure. All the servants here were held to a high standard as they worked for the Duke and had to look dignified. This was important to Serena and her plans. If she liked a man, she had to let the missus know so that she could arrange a date for the mistress. This was her special duty. Lissa was shocked and did not expect such a system at all. Serena explained that this was her specialty, not medicine or anything else, but organizing secret meetings. Lissa noted that she was married and doubted how appropriate such meetings were. Serena, however, believed that this was a fictitious marriage and had a different attitude towards it. Usually, in such fictitious marriages, spouses from the aristocracy cheat on each other. Almost all rumors among the nobility concerned precisely such stories and were widely spread. Lissa was having an audience, and the cartoon about adultery that was in her head seemed strange to her. There were some intrigues in it, and she couldn't understand what exactly the author had in mind when he created such a story. According to the laws of the empire, most of the problems arise because it was almost impossible to get a divorce. This creates many difficulties for people who find themselves in difficult life situations related to marriage. It was strange that parents sometimes force their children to marry even if they are not ready or do not understand what is happening. Perhaps Lissa did not fully understand all the details of such relationships and their consequences. Serena noted that she was a true expert in such matters. Her observations and experience allowed her to see situations from a different perspective, which often eluded others. Lissa was surprised when she found out who the guild leader had chosen for the important role. She felt that this person was not quite right, and she could not understand what exactly they were counting on. She was interested in the question, did the head of the guild really choose the person who could cope with the task? Her doubts grew, and she wanted to understand how correct the choice was. After that, Lissa turned to Serena and said that she needed to tell her something important about Sven. She understood that the information could be serious and wanted to prepare her interlocutor for the conversation. She had to exhale and speak in a calm voice so as not to cause unnecessary excitement and to remain calm. It was not easy, but she understood how important the right tone was. Last time, while she was out walking, she smelled Harry in the building behind the cafe. This alerted her, and she asked Serena to pass this information to the guild leader so that he could thoroughly check what was happening. They have a very good relationship, but she always has a fear that something bad might happen, so she thinks it's better to take all possible precautions in advance to avoid problems. She noticed that both Sven and the lady were very important to her despite their different circumstances. Both of them had a special place in her life, and she tried to cherish these relationships, understanding their importance to herself. Sven's mother lives near the Dark Guild's cafe where a wizard has recently taken up residence. This wizard constantly conducts his strange experiments which cause concern among the locals. Over time, it will become clear that the wizard will make a mistake in his experiment, which will lead to the destruction of Sven's mother's house. This event will become a serious test for everyone associated with this place. Seymour, who approached his friend to help him buy land, faced many difficulties due to what was happening around him. He had to go through many difficult moments to continue his plans. Now the situation has changed, and he will be able to buy the necessary territory without any problems. All the obstacles that previously hindered this process have finally been removed, and the matter is coming to an end. This will be good for her son, and Sven will be a real savior for her. Thanks to him, the situation will improve, and he will receive gratitude for his help and support in difficult times. The guild leader asked Serena how the latest events had gone and whether all the issues had been resolved. His interest was sincere, as the peace and order in their community depended on it. Serena replied that Lissa seemed like a very nice girl who she liked and respected. This added positive emotions to the conversation despite the serious topics. However, he asked to inform the Duke that due to illness, Lissa would unfortunately not live long, until about the age of 20. This news was a heavy blow to everyone who knew her. The Duke was not surprised to hear this because he had already tried to help this girl. He knew very well about her illness and did everything he could to improve her condition. Understanding how serious it was, the guild leader expressed doubts that the Duke knew nothing about the situation. He was sure that the Duke was aware of everything and was simply not revealing his cards because the matter was much more serious than it seemed at first glance. It seemed that the girl had decided that the Duke would abandon her. Because of this, she began to act as if everything was fine and looked for a way to escape. Her actions resembled an actor's performance full of desperate attempts to escape from reality. This behavior is quite normal for her age. It needs to be closely monitored because at such a young age the child may hide her true feelings trying to cope with the disease in her own way. After observing, it became interesting to see where all this would lead. Perhaps their mentor or master would appear, who could help the girl and change the situation, giving her support and the right direction. When the Duke heard about it again, he was in complete shock. The Lord also noticed that Neo reacted strongly to the news, which spoke of how serious and unexpected it was for everyone. Neo really reacted to the lady very emotionally. Her feelings were so strong that there was no doubt about the seriousness of what happened, and this attracted special attention from those around her. Then the Duke told about the situation, and the siren was shocked to the depths of her soul. She realized how complicated and serious everything was, and began to look for ways to help in this difficult story. It was not without reason that he reacted to the noblewoman like that. The guild leader had to be aware of what was happening, so he kept her under surveillance and closely followed the developments in order to intervene in time. But still, the girl was too young for such trials and dramas. Her age was a cause for concern because at this age it is difficult to cope with such a burden and maintain mental balance. For them, 10 years is not such a young age as it seems. In their world, even at this age, children begin to realize many things and take responsibility, which makes the situation even more difficult. But most likely there will never be another person with such a powerful force that can withstand such a threat. This level of power is unique, and it is unlikely that anyone will be able to replicate it. Despite this, Neo still reacted to her appearance, showing that she had not gone unnoticed. Her power or presence had caused him some attention. She had never met a nobleman who could stand up to a demon before, and that was what made him stand out from the rest. Such a man was an exception to the rule. However, she only stays in the human world for a short time, and he understands that a difficult situation is coming. He believes that he can easily deal with it, although there is danger. They need time to understand the gravity of the situation. They must calmly assess her capabilities and plans in order to build the right strategy. Nothing bad will happen if they work together and do not fall apart. Together, they will be better able to face the challenges that may arise. Their presence here is not for entertainment or empty fun. Each of them pursues specific goals and understands the importance of their mission. However, in the end, Lissa will still find a way to escape despite all the obstacles and attempts to hold her back. She uses a false name, acquires land, and even feigns illness, all carefully planned steps to achieve her goal. From this, it becomes clear that she wants to get away from Evan and distance herself from him using cunning and deception. It wasn't hard to realize this. It was enough to look closely at her actions and intentions to understand the true motive. Cyrena offered to help Lissa find another man, and the idea itself seemed quite successful and timely to her. It could open up new opportunities for Lissa and change her life for the better. However, the head advised not to rush into such decisions. He believed that now was not the time to think about new relationships and that it was worth concentrating on current affairs without being distracted by personal life. When it came to men, something unexpected and unusual happened that made everyone pay close attention to what was happening. This event turned out to be important and could influence further events. Suddenly, a young man from the common class appeared who approached the chief with a request to take from him the money won at the races. His intentions and actions caused some surprise among everyone. This young man wanted to use his winnings to buy a Hanyu estate and a title, but it is known that Lissa could only afford half of such an estate as her financial means were limited. Cyrena asked the chief if the young man was handsome, and he replied that he looked rather rough and did not give the impression of being an attractive man. At this moment, the woman finally became convinced that the situation was truly strange and unusual, and that what was happening could not be explained by ordinary means. Two people who had won big money at the races had done similar things, raising questions about whether Lissa was being closely watched. There was speculation that Lissa was indeed being followed, and this could have serious consequences for her and those around her. The head admitted that he could not be completely sure, but the probability that Lissa was being followed was quite high and should not be ruled out. We decided to closely observe her reaction to what was happening in order to understand how strongly she suspected or noticed these events and who was behind them. Cyrena assured that she would take on the task and do everything as promised. She was interested in whether everything would really work out as she said and how serious she was. It seemed like this was the girl Sven had been waiting for so long. Her appearance seemed fateful, as if she was supposed to play an important role in their shared story. Lissa was interested in when Evan would return from training. She began to watch the time and tried to understand whether she would have time to do what she had planned before he arrived. She hoped that she would have time to eat some berries before he returned, because this was one of her little wishes that she wanted to fulfill in peace and quiet. At that moment, she suddenly noticed that Evan had already returned home. His unexpected appearance caught her off guard, but inside she felt relieved. Evan looked surprised to see her awake at such a late hour. She explained that she was simply waiting for him, unable to sleep until he returned. He thought that she shouldn't waste time waiting in vain because it would be better to go to bed earlier and rest, because sleep is more important than all expectations. Evan said he was going to take a shower first and then leave right away, which made her wonder about his mood and the reason for his rush. Lissa couldn't understand whether he had always been like this, distant and reserved, or whether something had changed in him recently. This question haunted her. Suddenly she had an idea and asked Lissa to bring her some Darjeeling tea with a note saying that she missed him. It was her attempt to somehow get Evan's attention. Lissa promised to prepare everything and bring it right away, realizing that this tea would help Lissa stay awake and stay alert until the right moment. Darjeeling tea contains caffeine, and it should really help her stay awake so she can be alert and see what's going on with Evan. It was important for her to understand what was going on with Evan because his behavior was alarming, and she couldn't just leave it without an explanation. After a while, he came out of the shower and immediately noticed that she was awake again, Although she should have fallen asleep long ago, her eyes were wide open and she was looking at the ceiling as if she was waiting for something important. He realized that she still couldn't sleep, and this began to worry him. It seemed that the night was going to be long, and they had a whole day ahead of them requiring strength and attention. Lissa admitted that she couldn't fall asleep, and this surprised him. He didn't expect that it would be so difficult for her to relax and rest in such a familiar environment. It was summer, and it was strange to see him in a long-sleeved shirt, because in such weather they usually prefer something lighter and looser, rather than closed and dense. She suggested reading him a story to help him relax and fall asleep, noticing that something was wrong with his behavior, and he seemed to understand this too and agreed to her idea. Lissa reminded him that she had long ago promised to read him a fairy tale, and right now, when he couldn't sleep, was the best time to fulfill this promise and distract him from his worries. He looked very embarrassed, and she couldn't figure out what exactly was expressed on his face. Awkwardness or shyness or something deeper and more personal. She didn't want to think that something could seriously go wrong between them, although she felt that the atmosphere had become somehow tense and unusual. Maybe he's just tired or going through something of his own, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's just overwhelmed and doesn't want to talk about it. He seemed sweet and touching to her at that moment, and she hoped that he would like the idea of hearing a fairy tale which would help relieve tension and give him peace. When he returned, he said that everything was fine, and that she didn't have to read, as if he wanted to show that he could cope with insomnia himself, not wanting to cause her unnecessary worry. He also added that it would be better not to buy such things in the future, perhaps referring to something from a book or a gift that was inappropriate at the moment. She didn't understand at all why he took it so seriously, and she was surprised that he didn't want to explain his feelings or the reasons for his behavior. His cold attitude seemed especially strange, considering that the book he mentioned was old with noticeable traces of soot, as if it had been through a lot. She was sure that she had read this book many times while he slept, and this thought brought back warm memories and a desire to create an atmosphere of comfort again. It was completely unclear why he was suddenly breaking her heart so cruelly, because just recently it seemed that everything was fine between them. Lissa could not find an explanation for his abrupt actions and felt confused. He said something like, she shouldn't wait for him anymore, that it would be better to just go to bed and not hope for further conversations or meetings. His words sounded cold and final, as if cutting off all hope. Lissa couldn't accept it and tried to understand why it all happened this way. She suggested reading the book she had recently bought together, hoping that it would somehow help them stay closer to each other, even for a moment. She explained that she wanted to spend time together, reading aloud. The idea was a way for her to maintain a connection, to keep the situation from falling apart completely. She believed that a book could brighten up their evening. Lissa carefully took his hand, but he was very frightened by the unexpectedness. His reaction seemed strange and alarming to her. She felt that something had seriously broken between them, and this worried her very much. The girl began to think that there was something wrong with him. Perhaps he had internal experiences that he didn't want to talk about, or even problems that he was hiding. She decided that they needed to figure it out. He was silent, as if afraid to tell the truth. He tried to explain something, but Lissa asked him to just sit quietly and not rush with answers, letting him know that she was ready to listen when he was ready to open up. Suddenly she lifted his shirt and noticed abrasions and a barely noticeable dot on the skin. It looked like traces of pain or recent troubles, and Lissa felt alarmed, realizing that something important could be hidden behind it. She asked what the wounds and marks were, but he was evasive, asking her to ignore them. His efforts to hide the truth only increased her suspicions and desire to know what was really going on. Lissa couldn't understand how he could ask her not to notice such things, because they were married and she considered him her closest person. Her heart sank at the thought that he was hiding pain from her. She said that he was very dear to her, that she was ready to help and support him no matter what. These words were sincere and came from the depths of her soul because she wanted to be there despite all the difficulties. His reaction was full of surprise. He didn't even know how to respond to such confessions. He was amazed that she didn't turn away, but on the contrary showed care and understanding at such a moment. She assumed there were probably others with bruises, so she decided to look in and check how things really were. She wanted to understand what was going on around her. He insisted that she stop saying that he always wore long-sleeved shirts to hide any marks that might give away the cause of the bruises. But in fact, these marks looked as if someone had deliberately beaten him, and it was clear that the wounds were not accidental, but the result of some kind of violence. She couldn't understand what was happening and asked what kind of bruises were there, and who could have done this to him, trying to find out the truth. Evan explained that she just didn't understand it was just a result of training. Everyone got bruises there, and it was considered normal. Therefore, according to him, there is no need to make a big fuss about it. There is nothing special about it, and there is no need to attach much importance to these bruises. He also noted that she did not need to tell him fairy tales because they were no longer children and should understand reality as it is. She heard such words from a person who believes that simply by holding hands, children are immediately born, which seemed strange and illogical to her. Evan was determined not to reveal the truth no matter what the reason, and even if she tried hard to interrogate him. She realized that this was a closed topic for him, and decided to change her approach to the conversation so as not to scare him off completely. At the same time, she noted that she simply wanted to see him and understand what was wrong with him, which is why she behaved that way without any hidden motives. After these words, she suddenly burst into tears, and this scared him a lot because he did not expect such an emotional reaction. He immediately apologized for anything that might have offended or frightened her, showing how important her understanding was to him. She felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she tried to hold them back. Her desire to continue the interrogation was stronger than her emotions, but he immediately apologized, interrupting her impulse. This stopped her for a moment. It was clear that he was not going to share any information with her. His words and behavior showed that he was deliberately hiding something important. She understood that it would be very difficult to extract the truth. There was no other way. She couldn't just refuse because her heart was breaking with pain for Evan. This feeling made her go on despite her inner doubts and fears. In reality, she might not have wanted to know the truth, but the desire to help was stronger. She really wanted to do everything to make Evan's life easier and support him in his difficult time. Her determination was such that she was going to figure it all out, even if she had to do it secretly without Evan's knowledge. She wasn't going to stop at any obstacle. The next day, Lissa looked clearly agitated, her face betraying internal tension. This did not go unnoticed by those around her, who began to ask questions about her condition. Someone asked seriously what was wrong with her, because she looked as if she had lost all her vitality like a wilted flower. This comparison accurately conveyed her fatigue and anxiety. Lissa admitted that she had been having trouble sleeping lately. Her inability to relax and find peace affected her appearance and general condition, making her even more vulnerable. It had been 2 days since then, and Evan had almost stopped talking to her. He had begun to distance himself as if something inside him was breaking, and this alienation was weighing on her with every passing minute. Despite this, she continued to play the role, pretending to be calm and even tossing and turning next to him as if trying to hug and support him in his sleep. It was her quiet attempt to maintain closeness. But he did not respond to her efforts with any signs that could show disappointment or resentment. He only sighed quietly and continued to sleep as if locked in his own world. Evan was always extremely careful, especially in everyday life. He did not allow himself to undress completely, even at night, preferring to sleep in long shirts that completely covered his arms and back. As the old marks on his body began to gradually disappear, new ones soon appeared in their place. It was as if an invisible hand was leaving fresh marks, not allowing the body to heal completely. Although the new marks were not visible at first glance, Evan still tried to hide them carefully. He always made sure that his clothes fit tightly to his body, not allowing any suspicious glances. Lissa was at a loss as to who could do this to him. At first she thought it might be the Duke, since he was often harsh, and Lissa suspected that he was the one capable of such a thing. But everything changed the day the Duke left, and as soon as he left the estate, fresh marks appeared on Evan's body. This meant only one thing: someone else was causing the pain. It was related to training, but even here there were many questions. She could not trust the investigation to an outsider because the Duke would easily notice suspicious activity and suspect something was wrong. The Duke did not want to see an intelligent woman who could think for herself. He needed someone who would simply step aside over time and not interfere with his plans and peace. Lissa decided to talk to Serena. She was interested in whether she could have temporarily transferred control of her fortune or access to it to the Duke for some reason. Severnaya reported that she had conveyed to him everything that had been discussed in the conversation with the lady. She specified that no other orders had been received, and for now everything remains unchanged. Lissa assumed that he would say that there was no need for treatment and hoped to hear that everything was not so serious and that medical intervention was no longer required. Serena also noticed that Lissa was destined for something important. She wanted to give it to her personally because she believed that it should go into safe hands. Sven mentioned that she had done him a great favor. He was clearly grateful and spoke of it with respect, emphasizing her action. Sven's mother lived in the house in question. As it turned out, a mad wizard lived nearby, conducting experiments and not caring about the consequences. If things continue in the same direction, the building may simply explode. No one knows when disaster will happen, but it is quite possible. Thanks to Larissa's actions, Sven would be able to save his mother, so he considered her help valuable. She, in turn, expressed gratitude for this. Lissa couldn't wait to find out what was inside. When she opened it, she found a piece of jewelry that looked very elegant and expensive. Everyone hoped that she would accept this gift. Lissa was absolutely delighted and did not hide her emotions, especially from such a surprise. Since it was a gift, she would feel awkward refusing. She knew it would be impolite not to accept it since the gesture was made from the heart. Lissa nevertheless noted to herself that she had a presentiment that she would really like the thing. She could not shake off the feeling that someone was watching her as if assessing her tastes. One commoner named Seymour suddenly began to repeat her way of earning money as if he was carefully copying her every move, causing her mixed feelings and slight irritation. Although at first glance it was Seymour who looked like a copycat, in fact it turned out to be the opposite. It was Lissa who once resorted to similar methods, albeit in a different form. But now she decided to pretend she didn't notice. With such large sums at his disposal, acquiring a title seemed strange, and buying an estate seemed pointless. It is therefore not surprising that his actions seem suspicious to her. Neither she nor those around her can understand what he wants to achieve with all these actions. Yet he clearly copies her behavior, even the way he conducts business, his small habits. All this is like a reflection of Lissa, only rougher and less elegant. She realized that if she hadn't taken action first, it would not have been Seymour who became suspicious. And then the situation could easily have turned against her. Now, Lissa needs to be more careful. Even the smallest displays of emotion can give her away, so she tries to control every gesture. She mentally apologized to this Seymour, realizing that she did not think very generously of him, even though he acted defiantly and sometimes absurdly. She noticed the servants entering the room, their hands full of boxes. It looked like a small celebration just for her. Everything turned out to be exactly the same gifts that had been briefly mentioned earlier. Each of them was carefully selected as if they knew her wishes. Inside were clothes, and they appeared to have already been tailored to her measurements, as if someone had studied her figure beforehand and taken the time to make sure everything fit perfectly. There were noticeably more boxes in the room than usual, and it was immediately obvious it felt like something was being hidden. Everything was stacked too neatly, as if they wanted to hide the excess. The Duke gave orders to buy a dress similar in style, but preferably more expensive. He wanted it to be seen on her, and it looked impressive. Lissa could only resign herself to it. There were indeed a lot of boxes, but Lissa was distracted when she ran into Serena the next day. She was not alone. She was with a new doctor whom she had just met. The doctor's name was Lissa, and Lissa was quickly told that she would now be a servant sent especially for her to help with her daily chores and take care of her health. Serena politely added that Lissa would now be her attending physician. She said this calmly, as if the change had been expected, but it still made Lissa a little wary. Unexpectedly, Lissa commented on Larissa's appearance, saying that she looked better without the hairpin. In her opinion, the decoration only added age and looked out of place. As it turned out, Lissa chose this hairpin herself when she was in the city. Her choice was not accidental. She wanted Lissa to look sophisticated and elegant. Liza explained that the hairpin emphasized Larissa's advantages, giving her the image of a mature woman with good taste. According to her, it was not just an ornament, but a sign of style. Larissa, puzzled, asked if this little thing made her look too grown up. She was embarrassed that such a simple detail could have such a strong influence on her image in the eyes of others. Serena countered that the pin was long out of fashion and there were far more appropriate options. Her gaze was stern, as if she were passing a verdict with no right of appeal. Lissa, not giving in, said that she had been working with Larissa for much longer and therefore knew better what would really suit her. She stood her ground confidently. Despite the fact that everything looked harmonious on the outside, Larissa still realized that tastes and preferences do not matter when it comes to everyday life with another person under one roof. Larissa often noticed that Evan and Seymour could argue non-stop as if they found special joy in it. Neither of them wanted to give in, and each time it seemed that their squabble would never end. So Larissa decided not to waste time interfering in other people's disagreements, but to start choosing a dress. She wanted to distract herself, feel more confident, and just think about something light. She felt that her body had become too sluggish and weak. Fatigue was quickly accumulating, and she really wanted to regain some form. The decision to train came to her unexpectedly. Larissa hoped that if she mastered at least some of the martial arts, it would help her not only to become physically stronger, but also to gain self-confidence. In her heart, she believed that she could handle it. When she voiced her idea, everyone literally froze in surprise. But Larissa immediately added, "The doctor claimed that light exercise would only improve the overall condition of the body and strengthen the muscles." But she still understood that sword training was no joke. Besides, training in a dress would not only be uncomfortable, but also dangerous. You could easily get injured from an awkward movement. However, the knights immediately intervened, assuring that there was nothing to worry about. This was not a real fight, but just training, and it would not last long. Everything was controlled and calculated. Maybe the muscles will get a little tired, but nothing more. No serious loads were planned, and no one intended to bring things to exhaustion. This is just a trial lesson. However, as Larissa expected, one of the men still expressed doubt. According to him, the petite girl would hardly be able to even hold a sword correctly, let alone wield it. To which Larissa calmly replied that she had not claimed anything like that. She had no intention of proving anything to anyone, but simply wanted to try it out. For herself, nothing more. Larissa wasn't planning to train hard as many might think. She just wanted to understand a little about knightly exercises, since Evan was now part of the knightly squad and she wanted to find more in common with him. But the idea of training with him seemed strange to her. The difference between them was huge. Evan was far ahead in combat skills, and she knew he would have to hold back a lot for her sake. In addition, Mr. Evan had a special training program. He trained according to an individual scheme, which was not suitable for beginners like Larissa, and definitely did not include joint training. She decided to check if he really was working with the captain of the night squad, and heard confirmation. This explained a lot. His workload was really different from the others and much more serious. Larissa felt genuine gratitude for this information. It helped her understand a little better what her husband was living now and why he couldn't just go and train next to her. It turned out that the man who oversees Evan's training used to be the head of the night squad under her former husband. This news stunned Larissa because she never expected to meet someone from the past in such a role. It was almost unbelievable that the man who had commanded in the past was now personally training her husband. The thought of such an experienced commander working with him inspired respect and a little excitement. She seemed to have heard of this man before but hadn't paid attention to it. Now that the details were coming together, her memory told her that the name had come up more than once in conversation. The guild leader had once mentioned that this commander was hopelessly in love with Matilda. That story seemed distant, but now it surfaced unexpectedly, clearly filling the situation with special meaning. It was said that he always wore only blue uniform, as if it were his vow. Larissa heard that this choice was connected with the color of Matilda's eyes, which he seemed to never forget. Seeing the man in the blue uniform, she couldn't help but ask him his name. The name that was heard finally confirmed her guess, and the memories immediately came to life. Once he was only a deputy commander, but 5 years ago, he was appointed to the top position. This path was not easy but deserved. Larissa already began to respect him without words. Since Evan is undergoing personal training, they most likely train in the backyard. Even her father often used the backyard for his training, as it was a secluded and convenient place. It was quiet and calm in the yard next to the garden, but her mouth twisted in displeasure. She understood that they would hardly like her if these people began to interfere with their unexpected arrival. It could only disturb their peace. She clarified the details while carefully collecting the necessary information. Everything happened without intrusive questions, as if she was skillfully fishing out precise information without causing suspicion or irritation in her interlocutors. Severnaya quickly noticed this people often like to correct others, especially if they have misinterpreted the wording of a question. It is better to get an accurate answer without asking direct questions than to remain in the dark after trying to ask directly. That's why the lilac became curious about what this woman was really up to and why she needed to approach the conversation and gather information so carefully. After these reflections, the lady turned to Eliza as if wanting her to listen carefully to her words and make an important decision. Liza asked again what exactly the lady wanted. Larissa answered that the rose garden seemed gloomy and sad to her, and asked what had happened to it and why it had lost its former beauty. Lissa explained that the garden had previously been looked after by the late Duchess. She loved flowers and devoted a lot of time and effort to keeping the garden in beautiful condition. To be honest, at the moment when the lady gave Lissa flowers, everyone involuntarily remembered Madame Matilda. Her image and love for this garden came to mind especially vividly. Everyone seemed to be transported back in time and remembered how much effort and soul Madame Matilda had put into caring for the garden, which now seemed so abandoned. Her arrival had made the queue so long, and it was now clear why people had such disappointed looks. They were all deeply affected by the loss and changes that had taken place in the garden. It was amazing how strongly she remained in everyone's memory because of the rose garden. This garden was truly their common love, and now everyone felt empty and sad when they looked at it. Lissa noticed that unfortunately, due to his longing for Madame, he was unable to approach the garden as planned. They had also failed with this plan. All attempts had been in vain. Larissa was sincerely grateful for the story that was told to her, and it seems that thanks to this, she began to look at the situation differently. Her internal attitude gradually changed. Lissa noticed that the lady was coughing more and more often and more severely, every day. Her health was probably deteriorating, and this could not help but cause concern among those around her. Larissa knew it was hard to hear coughing all the time, but she tried to cope with it. Meanwhile, Serena had already chosen a suitable dress for the upcoming event. Lissa asked Serena, who she considered herself to be as a doctor, if she ignored such an important symptom as a patient's cough. The question was asked with a note of reproach. In response, Serena stated that she takes the patient's condition very seriously, as well as her own appearance. This caused Lissa some surprise. They started arguing again, and Larissa felt tired of this constant tension. She wanted peace and quiet, not new conflicts. Larissa understood that in any case, she would have to choose one of the dresses for herself to thank her father. This was an important matter, and she could not refuse it. At this time, Evan was in training where he was fully focused on his exercises and trying to achieve the maximum result. He gave it his all, fighting himself and his abilities to become stronger and better at what he did. The commander gave the boy a sharp push, and he lost his balance, falling to the ground. The blow was strong enough to immediately attract the attention of those around him. His fall looked painful and sudden. The guy started coughing as if he was trying to recover from the blow. It was obvious that he was really in pain, and there was an uneasy silence around him. People were worried about how seriously he was hurt. It was said that during his time at the academy, the boy had an exceptional talent for handling the ball. His skills were appreciated by everyone in training, and these were not empty words. He really managed to impress. He was now at the same level as the Duke was in his younger years. His skills and technique were almost identical. This showed how much he had grown and how seriously he took his work. If he hadn't been able to parry the attack at that moment, his opponent would have easily struck him hard. This particularly irritated him. He wasn't used to losing control, and he didn't like this possibility at all. He could not see anything similar to Matilda in the guy. For him, this young man was as difficult and even terrible a person as the Duke himself, who often caused discontent. The commander ordered the boy to get up from the ground. His voice was firm and peremptory, leaving no choice despite the obvious pain. The commander explained that the guy had to be patient and enduring, because true strength comes from the ability to not give up. Because of these words, the guy began to get angry. He believed that he was being treated too harshly and unfairly. The commander in response only smiled with a slight ironic grin, as if expecting such a reaction and enjoying the situation. After Matilda's death, the commander began to discuss the topic again, returning to memories and painful thoughts. He asked Evan how many people he thought lived in a real nightmare after these events, finding no peace in anything. The Duke lost all hope of happiness forever. His heart was torn apart by pain and despair, and he could no longer imagine joy or peace in his life. The boy should have thought seriously about the Duke and the weight he carried in his soul. He was not just a man, he was a prisoner of his feelings and memories. The Duke constantly beat and scolded the boy for the death of his mother. These quarrels left deep wounds in the soul of the young man, making him feel guilty and afraid at the same time. He promised to destroy the one who had taken his mother from him, doing it with his own hands, slowly and painfully. There was a cold determination and a dark threat in his voice. The Duke did not hide his desire to meet this man again in a duel. His anger and resentment were so strong that he wanted a final answer. The guy stood up, although he was exhausted and tired, but he still had to continue training. He understood that without effort, he would not get out of this circle of pain. His sword was wooden, while the commander had a real iron blade. This not only emphasized the difference in strength, but also made the fight even more brutal and unfair. Ludva was indeed true. No one said it out loud, but everyone around shared the Duke's opinion, and this made the atmosphere even heavier. No one wanted to discuss these topics in the Duke's presence, but secretly everyone thought the same as he did. It was an unwritten truth that everyone was afraid to voice. The atmosphere in the mansion without Madame Matilda became completely different. Previously, the Duke only guessed that something had changed, but now he clearly felt the emptiness and cold around him. He understood that he was the cause of all this suffering and grief, that he was the starting point of all the troubles that had befallen their lives. Meanwhile, the Duke continued to work, trying to distract himself from his painful thoughts, immersing himself in affairs and duties, in order to forget himself at least a little. He asked if that was all the information about Princess Ella. He wanted to know more to understand what was behind her quiet demeanor. The butler confirmed his suspicions, adding that the princess was not acting openly at the moment. She was conducting her affairs carefully, hiding her true intentions. Little by little, Princess Ella strengthens her influence in the imperial family despite her apparent passivity. Her steps were thoughtful and cunning, creating a new force. The emperor was still too young to make independent decisions and act as he wished. His power remained limited, and all important matters were decided by adults. However, Princess Ella will soon cease to be the main figure in the imperial family. Her role will begin to change, and the court's attention will shift to other events and people who will prove more important. It was clear that Evan urgently needed to marry the princess. This marriage could bring him significant advantages and strengthen his position in the noble world. The nobleman, hearing this, replied that he could go, after which he collapsed into a chair as if from fatigue or the weight of the decision he had just heard, and could not immediately come to his senses. He closed his eyes and mentally plunged into the memories of his past life, where much was different and events developed completely differently, forcing him to think about the present. The woman heard someone talking about the snowstorm and expressing confusion about why it was so difficult for him, as if he was confused by the very atmosphere of the place, as if he could not figure out what was happening. He hid behind a tree, watching with curiosity who it was. His attention was drawn to the unfamiliar figure, and he tried to understand what to expect from this unexpected witness. It turned out that it was Matilda's friend Countess Rostri, who was telling her that her husband was cheating on her, which was hurting her and making her feel betrayed and alone. Her son was sent to the Eastern continent for going against his father's will, and recently her best friend left this world too early, leaving behind a void and bitterness in her heart. She sat on her friend's grave and talked about it, saying that she had just learned terrible news. Her daughter was seriously ill, and this added even more anxiety and worry to her soul. She suffered from a severe lung disease, and doctors predicted that she would live no more than 20 years. She was afraid to open up to anyone because the fear of the future gripped her heart and would not let go. She doubted whether her daughter would be able to live a happy life because the disease itself threatened not only her own fate, but also the fate of the child, for whom she was very worried. Every time her daughter started coughing, the mother's heart sank with pain. These attacks were like a knife stab, reminding her of the terrible disease that was slowly destroying her body. After the tragic deaths of Countess Rostri and her husband, the situation became even more complicated, and no one was sure what would happen next for their family in this difficult ordeal. Upon learning of this, he immediately took Larissa away to keep her safe and married her to Evan, a man she could trust and who could protect her in these difficult times. Larissa had nowhere to go, and she stayed in the house until he came. She hoped that one day she would find support from relatives, but for now she was forced to wait and hope for the best. He saw this plan as an opportunity. With its help, they could hide from gossip and suspicion, and when the time came, Larissa would leave and no one would suspect anything. But now he was increasingly tormented by a feeling of pity. At the same time, he could not understand why Larissa was the one who attracted his attention so much and caused such emotions. He invited her in, and it was not easy for him to say what he felt. The words stuck in his throat, but he knew that he could no longer remain silent and that he had to be honest with himself and with her. She said that she really appreciates his gifts because they are always made with care and soul. She thinks that such things are rare, and this is especially touching. Every little thing seems special and important to her. She mentioned that she received not only gifts from him, but also a dress, a hairpin, and a necklace which she carefully keeps. These things are not just decorations for her, but a reminder of his care and attention. He thought about it and compared her to a squirrel, just as lively, nimble, and a little mysterious. There was something touching and fragile about her that did not allow him to remain indifferent to her image. He noticed that she seemed shorter than her peers, which could be due to her illness. This thought saddened him because he saw how difficult it was for her to be so weak around others. She also prepared a gift. It was modest, but made with warmth and love, which was most important to him. He valued her efforts much more than expensive things. He carefully untied the knot and unwrapped the package to see what she had prepared. Inside was a drawing that immediately caught his attention with its sincerity and simplicity. It was another drawing of a happy family, each one depicted with warmth and care. The picture seemed to convey joy and hope, which was especially valuable to him. He noticed that the figures in the picture were similar to each other, but it was unclear who exactly was depicted. There were 3 people in the center, and this made him think about the meaning of this picture. At first, he thought the drawing was of himself, but she explained that it was Evan. This explanation added even more meaning to the whole picture. She admitted that she decided to give him a drawing because he liked her previous gift so much. Her desire to give him something meaningful showed sincerity and care. He regretted that after the races their communication had greatly decreased and they had hardly spent time together. This circumstance left a warm sadness and some regret in his soul. He honestly admitted that he was rarely around his son. However, Larissa reminded him that they were a family, and it was important for them to try to get along with each other for the sake of their common future. The father said that each of them is too busy with their own affairs and completely forgets about how important it is to maintain good relationships in the family. In the hustle and bustle of everyday life, they often do not notice this. Despite this, family members do not support each other even in the most difficult and hard moments, and this fact still brings her some joy and relief. Larissa said that she had a lot of classes and studies at the moment, so she suggested visiting him with her, although the man didn't like the idea at all. She was very eager to see him, but he assumed that she really just wanted her to go alone without his participation and help. The girl began to explain that they were a family and that was why they should be together, especially in moments when support was needed. She had a difficult relationship with her parents, especially her father, but now she strives to establish good and warm relations with them. She is even saddened by the fact that Evan was not there to go with them and support them during this difficult period. Later, she remembered again that she had already said that he was ill, and now spent most of his time in bed weakened by his illness. She really wants to collect a lot of bright and good memories, while she still has the strength and opportunity to move and live a full life. He remembered the words of Larissa's mother spoken at the grave of his late wife. She assured him that she would not live more than 20 years, and these words were forever imprinted in his memory. The mother wondered whether her daughter would be able to find true happiness in the future and live a full life, despite the difficulties and trials that lay ahead. At that moment, he made the decision to go with her, and she was incredibly happy, as if long-awaited hope filled her heart with light and warmth. She couldn't believe that he actually agreed to accompany her, because before such proposals seemed almost impossible. He explained that together they would be able to create important and happy memories that would stay with them forever, despite all the trials. Hearing this, she was truly happy and grateful for his support and willingness to accommodate her wishes. They set off on their journey, although he was not very enthusiastic, but he still agreed, trying not to let her down and to be there. She urged him to hurry so as not to waste time, hoping that his father would also hurry, and everything would go quickly. Her mood was bright, she was smiling, seemed genuinely happy and full of hope for the best. But when she turned around, her face became serious, as if at that moment the weight of the upcoming trials fell upon her. She decided that she would take revenge on the offender much more severely than the commander, and was ready to do everything to protect her husband at any cost. The father showed them the way and explained that the training ground was on the left, so that they would not get lost and would find the right place. She countered that this was not the case because it was usually ordinary knights who trained there, not the ones she was interested in. She reminded that Evan was trained personally by Commander Ludva, which made his training special and different from the others. The gentleman was very surprised when he found out that his son was training there. The woman explained that the classes were held in Rostochka's garden, and that this place was chosen specifically for training. This amazed him because he did not expect this. After Matilda's death, the father no longer visited this place. The loss of his mother left a deep mark, and it was hard for him to return to a place where everything reminded him of the past. From then on, he avoided the garden and his son's training. Also, if two people are studying in the same place at the same time, it must mean something. Such a coincidence could not be accidental and may have had an important meaning for the events that were to take place. The woman understood that the presence of these two in the garden was symbolic. Such a coincidence could be interpreted as a sign or a foreshadowing. She saw in it more than just a coincidence. She insisted that they hurry and not waste time. The man thought for a moment, but decided to follow her, trusting her decision. They walked together, thinking about the upcoming events and possible consequences. After some time, they had already reached the right place. It was clear that they had not wasted their time. Now everything depended on how it would go further. They were ready for what they would see and hear. The woman suggested that they let others know they were there and secretly observe what was happening. This was important to understand how things really were and whether their assumptions were worth trusting. She wanted to check if Evan was really good at fencing. Her interest was sincere because the future situation and her attitude towards her son's training depended on it. The father agreed with the proposal, considering it reasonable. Everything was going well until one of the ill-wishers began to offend Evan. In addition, he did not understand why the training took place in the garden because it seemed strange and inconvenient. After a while, she finally noticed them and asked her father to look carefully at what was happening, as if she wanted him not to miss something important. There was concern and insistence in her voice. Ludva said that this garden was a place that Madame tended with special tenderness and care while she was alive. He recalled how every tree and flower seemed filled with her soul and warmth. But after Evan's birth, the garden began to wither and turned into an abandoned, almost deserted place, just like the Duke himself, who became less lively and joyful than before, as if he had lost something important. Ludva linked these changes precisely with the appearance of Evan believing that everything bad happened because of him, and that it was his birth that changed everything for the worse. The man was talking incomprehensibly, as if his head was in confusion, claiming that Evan was about to lose something very important. His words were strange and confused, as if he had lost his mind. Lissa understood that training was taking place now, but she wondered why the commander pointed a real sword at Evan when the boy only had a wooden one. It seemed inexplicable and dangerous at the same time. The girl turned to her father and suddenly noticed that he was no longer there, as if he had disappeared from sight, which increased her anxiety and uncertainty. The commander continued to say something incomprehensible, as if justifying his actions, assuring that no one had reminded him of anything, and as if his words were becoming more and more incoherent and strange. The man understood that he would have to live his entire life with one goal: to atone for his past mistakes. This burden weighed on him, leaving him no moment of peace, forcing him to move forward no matter what. Suddenly he noticed movement behind him. The Duke was standing there. His appearance was unexpected and threatening, like a dark shadow that was about to cover everything around. Without thinking, the man hit the Duke and knocked him to the floor. This blow was filled not only with force, but also with rage that had been building up for a long time. He then asked with disdain how he dared to use ridicule specifically against his son. It was a personal insult for him, causing a storm of emotions. The man did not stop there and continued to brutally beat the commander. At this time, Lissa approached Evan, watching what was happening with alarm and concern. Evan couldn't understand why Lissa was here and what she wanted from him at such a tense moment. His thoughts were confused. He didn't expect her presence. Lissa explained that she had asked her father to let her come and watch the training. Her desire to see what was happening was sincere and simple. Evan covered her eyes with his hands and hugged her, asking her not to look or listen to what was happening around her. He wanted to protect her from the harsh realities. He said that what was happening was too cruel for her, and that she should not witness such cruelty. His concern was visible in every word and movement. However, Lissa herself came here precisely for this spectacle. She wanted to understand what was happening and how these tests were carried out. Then the other knights were also subjected to similar bullying, not understanding why the Duke was interfering and what was happening to the commander around whom everything was spinning. The Duke ordered the commanders to be sent to prison and declared that he would definitely return to them, leaving ominous promises for the future. They took him and led him away, not even giving him the chance to look back. Everything happened quickly, as if deciding his fate without the right to justification or explanation. Lissa was sure that he deserved a much more severe punishment than what was in store for him. Her anger did not subside, and in her soul there was growing confidence that there would be no justice. At this point, his father began to loudly scold Evan, accusing him of inaction and stupidity. He believed that standing and doing nothing was the worst possible decision. Lissa thought that now was not the time for lessons and moralizing, because everything that was happening required immediate intervention and decisive action. The guy suddenly said that he thought the commander was right, agreeing with him, as if taking all the blame on himself and admitting his mistakes. He even added that if he had not been born, Matilda might still be alive and happy, which only increased the tension in the air. Lissa was amazed. It seemed impossible to her that he had the courage to say such words, and she keenly wished that her father would intervene and put everything in its place. The father, without hesitation, declared that this boy was his son, the heir of the Duke, and that he must behave with dignity and bear his name with pride. From now on, he said, he must not allow any of his subordinates to treat him badly, and must defend his dignity at any cost. Lissa was in complete shock. She expected a much harsher reaction and punishment from the Duke, but heard only words of support and instruction. After all, he only beat up Lyudva, and everyone heard how patiently his son endured humiliations and insults, which were far from minor. The man called Fist had just left, and the situation had not improved in any way. The tension and discontent in the air remained undiminished. Lissa asked Evan not to talk about himself like that because she felt he was being too hard on himself. Her words were an attempt to support him and make him feel like she was there. She did not understand how he could consider himself guilty of his mother's death. After all, no one could have foreseen such a tragedy, and blaming himself was unfair. Evan believed that there was some truth in these thoughts, and they took over his mind. He did not try to fight them because he felt too guilty. He thought the commander was right. It was better to keep Lissa at a distance so that she would not suffer because of him. He believed that he did not deserve a close relationship Larissa did not agree with this opinion and resolutely took his hand in hers, showing that she was not going to back down. She said that everything was different and that she was very happy to be with him despite his doubts and fears. But he did not understand her words and wondered why she considered him sweet and worthy of support. Larissa remembered that her late mother would certainly not have wanted Evan to suffer and remain unhappy. She noted that her own parents had died, but she did not despair, but chose to work and move on with her life. Larissa said that even without all this, he was already a good guy and had endured a lot. After these words, Evan quietly placed his hand on hers as if seeking support and understanding in her. He admitted that he had recently spoken rudely to her and ignored her, for which he now sincerely apologized. Larissa replied that everything was fine, but he continued to insist that nothing was going well with him and that he did not deserve forgiveness. Larissa explained that it is normal for a couple to go through difficult moments, especially hard ones, and over time the situation will definitely improve if both try together and support each other. After Larissa's words, he unexpectedly pressed himself against her, showing his vulnerability, which she did not expect at all, because before he always seemed strong and reserved, but now he was completely different. He asked Larissa to never leave him and hugged her tightly, showing how important her presence was to him, as if at that moment his whole soul was looking for support and protection. His moral exhaustion was obvious. He had held out for a long time, but now the stress had taken its toll because he had to face the harsh reality that he had always been afraid to accept. Larissa said that it was time for them to move on, noticing that it was hard for him to walk, to which he replied that he was a little tired, but was still ready to move on, not wanting to show weakness. She tried to help him take steps, supporting and encouraging him, because she knew how difficult it was for him to overcome not only physical fatigue, but also internal tension. At that moment, he began to have a coughing fit, and Larissa, citing urgent matters, asked that someone else take care of him, realizing that she could not stay nearby now. He couldn't understand why Larissa had left so quickly, leaving him alone in such a state, and this feeling of confusion only increased his loneliness and anxiety. He tried to make sense of what was happening, not understanding why she ran away so quickly and why she left him without support at the very moment when he especially needed it.